And
Excellent.
then I'm going to grab the link and put it in the forum. And all right, so we are live right now.
Okay.
Let me copy paste the link in there and then we'll get going. So yeah, I think starting at section 42 is the best course of action. I don't know if you have a better idea.
No, no, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
So on my screen that you can't see,
Hmm.
I have everything pulled up
Okay,
and
cool.
we are on on section 42. So actually if
Yeah,
you
I can
want
take
to
it off.
take it away while I mess around on this end and then
Sure.
all right.
All right. 42. Confirmation of the existential interpretation of Dasein as care in terms of Dasein's pre-ontological way of interpreting itself. In our foregoing interpretations, which have finally led to exhibiting care as the being of Dasein, everything depending on our arriving at the right ontological foundations for that entity, which in each case we ourselves are, and which we call man. To do this, it was necessary from the outset to change the direction of our analysis from the approach presented by the traditional definition of man, an approach which has not been clarified ontologically and is in principle questionable. In comparison with this definition, the existential ontological interpretation may seem strange, especially if care is understood just ontically as worry or grief. Accordingly, we shall now cite a document which is pre ontological in character, even though its demonstrative force is merely historical. We must bear in mind, however, that in this document, Dasein is expressing itself primordially, unaffected by any theoretical interpretation, and without aiming to propose any. We must also note that Dasein's being is characterized by historicality, though this may be first demonstrated ontologically. If Dasein is historical in the very depths of its being, then a deposition, which comes from its history and goes back to it, and which, moreover, is prior to any scientific knowledge, will have the special weight, even though its importance is never purely ontological. The understanding of being, which lies in Dasein itself, expresses itself pre ontologically. The document which we are about to cite should make plain that our existential interpretation is not a mere fabrication, but that as an ontological construction, it is well grounded and has been sketched out beforehand in elemental ways. There's an ancient fable in which Dasein's interpretation of itself as care has been embedded. Once, when Care was crossing a river, she saw some clay. She thought she thoughtfully took up a piece and began to shape it. While she was meditating on what she had made, Jupiter came by. Care asked him to give it spirit, and this he gladly granted. But when she wanted her name to be bestowed upon it, he forbade this and demanded that it be given his name instead. While Care and Jupiter were disputing, Earth arose and desired that her own name be conferred on the creature, since she had furnished it with part of her body. They asked Saturn to be their arbiter, and he made the following decision, which seemed a just one. Since you, Jupiter, have given it spirit, you shall receive that spirit at its death. And since you, Earth, have given its body, you shall receive its body. But since Care first shaped this creature, she shall possess it as long as it lives. And because there is now a dispute among you as to its name, let it be called Homo, for it is made out of humus, earth. This pre ontological document becomes especially significant not only in that Care is here, seen as to which human Dasein belongs for its lifetime, but also because this priority of care emerges in connection with the familiar way of taking man as compound of body, earth, and spirit. In care, this entity has the source of its being. Cura tenate quamida dixeret. The entity is not released from this source, but is held fast, dominated by it through and through, as long as this entity is in the world. Being in the world has the stamp of care, which accords with its being. It gets the name homo, not in consideration of its being, but in relation to that of which it consists, humus or humus. The decision as to wherein the primordial being of this creature is to be seen is left to Saturn. Time, chapter 6. Thus, the pre ontological characterization of man's essence, expressed in this fable, has brought in view in advance the kind of being which dominates his temporal sojourn in the world and does so through and through. The history of the signification of the ontical concept of care permits us to see still further basic structures of Dasein. Burdock calls attention to a double meaning of the term cura, according to which it signifies not only anxious exertion, but also carefulness and devotedness. Thus, Seneca writes in his last epistle, among the four existent natures, trees, beasts, man, and God, the later two, which alone are endowed with reason, are distinguished in that God is immortal while man is mortal. Now, when it comes to these, the good of the one, namely God, is fulfilled by his nature, but that of the other man is fulfilled by care. Man's perfectico, his transformation into that which he can be in being free for his own most possibilities, rejection, is accomplished by care. But with equal primordiality, care determines what is basically specific in this entity, according to which it has been surrendered to the world of its concern, thrownness. In the double meaning of care, what we have in view is a single basic state and its essentially twofold structure of throne projection. As compared with the ontical interpretation, the existential ontological interpretation is not, let us say, merely an ontical generalization, which is theoretical in character. That would just mean that ontically, all man's ways of behaving are full of care and are guided by his devotedness to something. The generalization is rather one that is ontological and a priori. What it has in view is not a set of ontical properties, which constantly keeps emerging, but a state of being which is already underlying in every case, and which first makes it ontologically possible for this entity to be addressed ontically as cura. The existential condition for the possibility of the cares of life and devotedness must be conceived as care in a sense which is primordial, that is ontological. And here I just think he's saying again that like care comes before everything else and like we being there.
Yeah, um I think kind of like anxiety is primordial in the way that it calls out like the um locality. I don't like the word locality. The locativeness of
Hmm.
us, like the fact that we are here and we are
Hmm.
something, and the fact that we are something means we can lose it. I think care is also like that primordial, I am here, I am alive,
Hmm.
and it's not even like I want things, it's that the possibility for wanting. Like I
Hmm.
want to eat, I want to sleep, I
Hmm.
want to continue living. Like it's yeah, it like care is the possibility for what we colloquial would call care, but like
Hmm.
care is like this primordial, ground upon which what we because it's again, it's one of those things that's outside language. Like I can approximate it with language, but
Hmm.
it's prior to language, and so it's kind of hard for us. I don't think it's that difficult to get your head around. It is
Hmm.
difficult to convey it and to like define it and point it out though.
And especially when like the entire canon of philosophy is putting in subject objects,
Exactly.
which he builds on later, or he did earlier. I can't remember.
I
But
he dunks on that
yeah,
so often. He
that's
does.
true.
He gets
That's
back to it
true.
later though too, but
That's
yeah.
true.
And he doesn't dunk on it in like this dumb internet way of dunking. Like
No,
he really
he's
truly does set it up to knock it down. Um
I think too, he's just trying to say like there's a passage in Aristotle that like one of my philosophy professors beat to hell. And it was something that was saying like everything man does is for some like good. And he was like, if you could disprove that statement, I'll give you an A in the class. And people were like, what if like you do something bad? I'm like, yeah, but you still feel it's good. And I'm like, that is care in a sense. Because it's like even if you like wake up and you're like I want to kill myself, it's because like being in the world is an issue for you and you care about ending that, or
yeah,
or if you're gonna
yeah, yeah,
shoot
yeah,
up
yeah,
drugs
yeah.
all day, same thing.
Yeah, it's like yeah, before you can want something, it has to matter to you in a way. You have to care about it. And before you can like up here forebrain care
Mm-hmm.
about it, like you have to back down here,
Yep.
spinal cord, reptilian brain care about
Yep.
it.
Why were cavemen putting random shit in their mouth to see if they could eat it? They weren't communicating.
Yeah.
Or if I see like a kid like drowning outside or about to get hit by a car, I don't need to formulate that with linguistics,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if it
yeah.
was like somebody speaking another language, just because there's that care. I guess in that instance, it would be solicitude, like, but that's still predisposed on that ontological or primordial care
Yeah.
that it like springs from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to being able to deftly put it into words.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm starting to see the outline. And again, in the past, I just thought Heidegger was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. It's kind of like hippy dippy."
Yeah.
But also maybe he was a Nazi. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. But really diving into it like this, is fucking awesome.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. It's that whole thing Dave is beating to death, which he needs to, about like rootedness,
Yeah.
because you're like rootedness in the text
Yep.
and trying to like get that. So yeah, I just wanted to stop and talk about that because I feel like that's something he talks about throughout the book, and it's just because I can finally like kind of see him weaving those arguments, and my like brain has a like it took me a while, but I was having a hard time following it because I'm so used to like get to your point, give me
Mm,
your fucking 250 characters or whatever. So it's
yeah.
just interesting to see how he expands.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but right. The transcendental generality of the phenomenon of care and of all the fundamental existentiality is, on the other hand, broad enough to present a basis on which every interpretation of Dasein, which is optical and belongs to a worldview, must move. Whether Dasein is understood as affliction, not, and the cares of life, or in an opposite manner. The very emptiness and generality which obtrude themselves optically in existential structures have an ontological definiteness and fullness of their own. Thus, Dazon's whole constitution itself is not simple in its unity, but shows a structural articulation in the existential conception of care. This articulation becomes expressed. Thus, by our ontological interpretation of Dasein, we have been brought to the existential conception of care from Dazon's pre ontological interpretation of itself as care. Yet the analytic of Dasein is not aimed at laying an ontological basis for anthropology. Its purpose is one of fundamental ontology. This is the purpose that has tacitly, determined the course of our own considerations here, there, too. Our selection of phenomena and the limits to which our analysis may proceed. Now, however, with regard to our leading question of the meaning of being and our way of working this out, Our investigation must give us explicit assurance as to what we have so far achieved. But this sort of thing is not to be reached by superficially taking together what we have discussed, rather, with the help of what we have achieved. That which could be indicated only crudely at the beginning of the existential analytic must now be concentrated into a more penetrating understanding of the problem.
Bum bum bum.
42. Yeah, just basically what I guess I jumped the gun and was analyzing a little bit early, but yeah, I think he's just setting it up and still just hammering that home.
Yeah, it I think it actually might have been earlier today. Um, I saw on Sublation Media.
Hmm.
God, now I can't remember the name of the dude. I like the guy too. He's from Arizona. I'm also in Arizona.
Oh, that's tight.
Cyber Dandy.
Hmm.
Cyber Dandy came on and they were talking about Heidegger. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I didn't get to listen to it. I think I heard like 5 minutes of it. Um, but I was like, oh, that's cool. And Cyber Dandy was talking about Marcuse's interpretation of Heidegger. I don't even know why I brought that up. Um,
Hmm.
other than to, yeah, I mean, it is cool that other people are digging into this as well. But um,
No, it's definitely cool.
the yeah, like our entire world worldhood is kind of crafted by care in a way. Like we shape the world around us through care.
Hmm.
And through disclosedness, um, we can develop concern and solicitude and shit like that. But it's through care that we shape the world and sense the world. And while we're sensing, we're always interpreting, we're always doing.
Hmm.
Um, the hermeneutical phenomenology or phenomenological hermeneutics. I can't
Hmm.
remember which
Yeah,
one comes
definitely.
first. But yeah, like we shape our world with care.
Hmm.
We are made of care.
Yeah, it's that
Um,
primordial,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just interesting because it's most philosophers don't. It's like the will to power,
yeah.
or like we have intuitions and other stuff. And Heidegger is like, no, we care about things, and they're like, what? But the argument tracks, at least to me, or not the argument necessarily, the description, the hermeneutical, phenomenological description.
Yeah, Heidegger is very, very descriptive, and I like that a lot.
Oh
I
yeah,
do like that. Like everything he does, he doesn't say, X therefore Y. He
yep,
says A B C D E F G, and then maybe you get to a X and Y later, but like he
yeah.
just describes things as they are rather than giving prescriptions, and I like that.
Oh yeah. No, it's just it's something that's never been done before. And I had another philosophy professor. It was critical thinking. It was like a logic class, and he was saying the four top philosophers are Greek and German. So this probably won't surprise you. It was Plato, Aristotle, Kant, and then Hegel was his list. And I wanted to raise my hand and bring up Heidegger, but I just didn't. One, I didn't want to derail the class, and then two, it's just funny because it's like people can kind of write him off, but it's like his description is pretty spot on in my opinion. And it's like I don't know if it's the Nazi thing or it's just a lot of people having tired with him because he wasn't a dumb guy. He would like look up obscure Augustine stuff in Latin and like contact like UC Santa Barbara and talk to them about it. So it just kind of like
I
was
think
funny to me.
I think yeah, I think he kind of went off and did do like some weird fucky hippy dippy shit.
Yeah.
And that kind of made it easy for people to write him off.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Um, and then of course there is the Nazi thing where people are like, yeah, fuck Heidegger, he's a Nazi, like I don't want to read
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But then there was also
Richard Roll.
people
Oh, just
who
kidding.
like wanted to read him, but didn't even read him. Like they were just like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds good. We're gonna read like you know, the
the
Cliff's Notes.
pamphlet or what. Yeah.
Yeah. And then and not actually like know what's going on, but just act like we do. I don't know, man. He's a figure,
Hmm.
um, for sure. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that list. I would just say, okay, then
No, yeah.
make it longer than 4.
Yeah, make it 5 for me. Because people then could like argue like Nietzsche or like Derrida or Deleuze, depending on who your like Kool-Aid is too. But no,
Yeah.
I agree. Like in my opinion, that is. But then you have like Dugin who will be like, no, Heidegger is the goat, and it's like
Yeah.
yes and no.
Yeah. Um well, and there's a reason for that too, because he does read him, seriously on his
That's true.
he takes him seriously. He doesn't do the Cliff's Notes version, and he doesn't do this. Oh, he
Or
kind of
his
said
kid's
this one
PTA
thing.
meeting or whatever.
Yeah, like he really does dive into the text and uh and live in it for a while before he comes back up for air. So
Mhm. Which is what we're trying to do. I can still read if you want.
I'll
I don't
take
mind. You want to take it?
yeah, I'll
Okay.
take this. We'll bounce back and forth.
Flip flop. Okay.
44 is when it gets long and we're gonna have to like take
Oh,
turns.
okay, that's
So
true. Okay, sounds good, man.
section 43, Dasein, worldhood, and reality. The question of the meaning of being becomes possible at all only if there is something like an understanding of being. Understanding of being belongs to the kind of being which the entity called Dasein possesses. The more appropriately and primordially we have succeeded in explicating this entity, the surer we are to attain our goal in the further course of working out the problem of fundamental ontology. In our pursuit of the tasks of a preparatory existential analytic of Dasein, there emerged an interpretation of understanding, meaning, and interpretation. There emerged an interpretation of understanding, meaning, and interpretation. Our analysis of Dasein's disclosedness showed further that, with this disclosedness, Dasein, in its basic state of being in the world, has been revealed equiprimordially with regard to the world, being in, and the self. Furthermore, in the factical disclosedness of the world, entities within the world are discovered too. This implies that the being of these entities is always understood in a certain manner, even if it is not conceived in a way which is appropriately ontological. To be sure, the pre-ontological understanding of being embraces all entities which are essentially disclosed in Dasein, but the understanding of being has not yet articulated itself in a way which corresponds to the various modes of being. At the same time, our interpretation of understanding has shown that, in accordance with its falling kind of being, it has, proximally and for the most part, diverted itself into an understanding of the world, even where the issue is not only one of ontical experience, but also one of ontological understanding. The interpretation of being takes its orientation in the first instance from the being of entities within the world. Thereby, the being of what is proximally ready to hand gets passed over, and entities are first conceived as a context of things, res, which are present at hand. Being acquires the meaning of reality. Substantiality becomes the basic characteristic of being. Corresponding to this way in which the understanding of being has been diverted, even the ontological understanding of Dasein moves into the horizon of this conception of being. Like any other entity, Dasein too is present at hand as real. In this way, being in general acquires the meaning of reality. Accordingly, the concept of reality has a peculiar priority in the ontological problematic. By this priority, the route to a genuine existential analytic of Dasein gets diverted, and so too does our very view of the being of what is proximally ready to hand within the world. It finally forces the general problematic of being into a direction that lies off the course. The other modes of being become defined negatively and privately with regard to reality. Thus, not only the analytic of Dasein, but the working out of the question of the meaning of being in general must be turned away from a one sided orientation with regard to being in the sense of reality. We must demonstrate that reality is not only one kind of being among others, but that ontologically it has a definite connection in its foundations with Dasein, the world, and readiness to hand. To demonstrate this, we must discuss in principle the problem of reality, its conditions, and its limits. Under the heading Problem of Reality, various questions are clustered. 1. Whether any entities which supposedly transcend our consciousness are at all. 2. Whether this reality of the external world can be adequately proved. 3. How far this entity, if it is real, is to be known in its being in itself. 4. What the meaning of this entity, reality, signifies in general. The following discussion of the problem of reality will treat three topics with regard to the question of fundamental ontology. A. Reality as a problem of being and whether the external world can be proved. B. Reality as an ontological problem. And C. Reality in care. A. Reality as a problem of being and whether the external world can be proved. Of these questions about reality, the one which comes first in order is the ontological question of what reality signifies in general. But as long as pure ontological problematic and methodology was lacking, this question, if it was explicitly formulated at all, was necessarily confounded with the discussion of the problem of the external world. For the analysis of reality is possible only on the basis of our having appropriate access to the real. But it has long been held that the way to grasp the real is by that kind of knowing which is characterized by beholding. I can already anticipate the lecture and
Mhm,
Dave bringing us to the Lacanian real here, and I'm looking
mhm.
forward to that.
Okay, cool.
Such knowing is as a way in which the soul or consciousness behaves. Insofar as reality has the character of something independent and in itself, the question of the meaning of reality becomes linked with that of whether the real can be independent of consciousness, or whether there can be a transcendence of consciousness into the sphere of the real. The possibility of an adequate ontological analysis of reality depends upon how far that of which the real is to be thus independent, and how far that which is to be transcended has itself been clarified with regard to its being. Only thus can even the kind of being which belongs to transcendence be ontologically grasped. And finally, we must make sure what kind of primary access we have to the real by deciding the question of whether knowing can take over this function at all. These investigations, which take precedence over any possible ontological question about reality, have been carried out in the foregoing existential analytic. According to this analytic, knowing is a founded mode of access to the real. The real is essentially accessible only as entities within the world. All access to such entities is founded ontologically upon the basic state of Dasein, being in the world, and this in turn has care as its even more primordial state of being, ahead of itself, being already in a world, as being alongside entities within the world. The question of whether there is a world at all, and whether its being can be proved, makes no sense if it is raised by Dasein as being in the world. And who else would raise it? Furthermore, it is encumbered with a double signification: the world as the wherein of being in, and the world as entities within the world, that in which one is concernfully absorbed, either have been confused or are not distinguished at all. But the world is disclosed essentially along with the being of Dasein. With the disclosedness of the world has in each case been discovered too. Of course, entities within the world, in the sense of the real as merely present at hand, are the very things that can remain concealed. But even the real can be discovered only on the basis of a world which has already been disclosed. And only on this basis can anything real still remain hidden. The question of the reality of the external world gets raised without any previous clarification of the phenomenon of the world as such. Practically, the problem of the external world is constantly oriented with regard to entities within the world, things and objects. So these discussions drift along into a problematic which is almost impossible to disentangle ontologically. Kant's refutation of idealism shows how intricate these questions are, and how what one wants to prove gets muddled with what one does prove, and with the means whereby the proof is carried out. Kant calls it a scandal of philosophy and of human reason in general, that there is still no cogent proof for the Dasein of things outside of us, which will do away with any skepticism. He proposes such a proof himself, and indeed he does so to provide grounds for his theorem that the mere consciousness of my own Dasein, a consciousness which, however, is empirical in character, proves the Dasein of objects in the space outside of me. So that's very Cartesian.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Um, and again, here in the paragraph just above, he's kind of getting at this. We're already there in the first place. It's
Yep.
already been interpreted. It's
Yeah.
already mediated. So
Who's raising the question of whether the world exists?
Exactly.
Like the I am is there before the cogito.
Dude, I love what he does with the
Spoiler alert.
yeah, I fucking love that.
Like Thomas Merton has a quote that's like similar to that, which like a buddy of mine got into years ago. He's like, no, I think he's wrong. Like, I think you need to read something.
I mean, like, I like it, dude. I agree with him. I like it. But I mean, that's, to me, that's very Hegelian. Like,
yeah,
it's like, okay, yeah, that tracks.
Even pragmatism, though, in a sense, because it's like we were in philosophy like 101 back in the day, and we were talking about like whether a table exists. And I think it was like Bertrand Russell was talking about the properties of the table and if there's more. And my professor was saying William James would be like, if I'm eating dinner, does it let my plates be on it? Like the table only matters to me and like its utility and the fact that it's like, and I know like Heidegger is not talking about like the pragmatism of it, but they're both just basically saying like the table exists in a world of like significance and meaning. For James, it's pragmatic. For Heidegger, I think he's just like, you're in a world already, you're being in the world, and you're doubting something that you're already part of, and it makes no sense.
Yeah. It's also very Wittgenstein.
Yes.
And I know we've said that a lot while reading this, but it is like I can't get outside of it.
I bought the Tractus the other day for like a
Tractatus for like $1 for real?
Yeah, it's $1 on Kindle.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I have an audiobook of it. I don't actually have a text. I've long wanted to get a physical copy of it, but
that would be a cool reading too at some point.
Yeah.
I can't make heads or tails on some of that. So
you see, you got to take some DMT first, dude.
I'm dead.
Yeah.
Just kidding. For legal reasons.
Oh yeah. Oh wait a minute. We're on YouTube. Yeah. We don't do any drugs. No, drugs are bad.
No. Yes.
Jesus. Just do Jesus. I'm high on Jesus.
Saves. That's true.
Jesus saves.
And Heidegger.
And Heidegger. Jesus and Heidegger.
Oh God. That's probably worse.
God mit unst. That's horrible. Oh my gosh. That is fucking horrible, actually.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, Jamie, pull that shit out.
Yeah. Proves the Dasein of objects in the space outside of me. We must, in the first instance, note explicitly that Kant uses the term Dasein to designate that kind of being which in the present investigation we have called presence at hand. Consciousness of my Dasein means for Kant a consciousness of my being present at hand in the sense of Descartes. When Kant uses the term Dasein, he has in mind the being present at hand of consciousness just as much as the being present at hand of things. The proof for the Dasein of things outside of me is supported by the fact that both change and performance belong with equal primordiality to the essence of time. My own being present at hand, that is, the being present at hand of a multiplicity of representations, which has been given in the inner sense, is a process of change which is present at hand. To have a determinate temporal character, however, presupposes something present at hand which is permanent. But this cannot be in us, for only through what is thus permanent can my Dasein in time be determined. I fucking love that too.
Wait.
Thus, if changes which are present at hand have been posited empirically in me, It is necessary that along with these, something permanent, which is present at hand, should be posited empirically outside of me. What is thus permanent is the condition which makes it possible for the changes in me to be present at hand. The experience of the being in time of representation posits something changing in me and something permanent outside of me, and it posits both with equal primordiality. Of course, this proof is not a causal infer, and that okay, just to kind of wrap that up,
Mhm.
it's just like a very like dialectical description of like being in the world.
Yep. Being in time.
Yeah, being in time. Yeah,
Yeah.
it says it on the cover, dude.
Yeah. I don't need to read the book now.
Yeah, you
Done.
get it. I mean, there is a there is a certain sense where that can be a truth. Maybe that's not true of the book itself,
Mhm.
but it can be a true thing about the book that just being and time, taking that and really problematizing it, that can take you a
Oh,
long
yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I like that. Like I feel like nobody wants to sit, nobody wants to tarry, nobody wants to dive in.
It's not sexy. Like, consciousness is sexy,
Mm.
and, like, the problem with that, the hard problem with AI, determinism, all that stuff, but it's, like,
Yeah.
tarrying with
Well, and I feel like all that stuff, like compatibilism is just dialectics.
mhm.
Um, and I feel like if you can't wrap your head around compatibilism, I feel like that's like step one. Like that, but that's like way, 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 way down here. Like that's like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's cool, that's interesting. But we're up here.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Like we climbed the mountain
Yeah,
or we're climbing the mountain.
that's true.
Um,
And like
but
none of this is a problem until you realize that like your being is an issue for itself. Like, it literally like you
yeah,
care about it. You have, do I exist? Well, you care if you
yeah.
exist, and
Of
you're
course,
within a world
motherfucker.
down it.
Who's
It's like,
asking the
yeah,
question?
yeah.
Who's asking if I exist? Yeah.
Nah, it's an evil demon.
I mean, no, I don't want to problematize that. I mean, there is something to the idea of like, are
Oh
we
yeah,
all philosophical
simulations.
zombies? Um, but yeah,
Oh, I posted another like recording of me, like the time lapse, and a different friend of mine was like, "Bro, you're doing all that work just to find out you live in a simulation." And I'm like, dude, are these people watching my YouTube videos? Like,
yeah.
how? I'm just like, okay. I'm like, I can't. Like, people are thinking like I'm making this up at this point.
I mean, what gets me about the simulation thing, like what's the guy? What the starts with a B? Bostrom, Nick Bostrom.
Okay.
The his version of the simulation, um, that came out after the Matrix. Like the
Mm-hmm.
everyone that talks about simulation after watching or after the Matrix came out, like
Mm-hmm.
um, we do live in a simulation. Like we already are living in a simulation, but it's not computers being jacked into our heads and like
Yeah.
it's the world of language is the
Yep.
simulation that we're in.
Yeah. It's magic,
Um,
and I don't realize that.
yeah, and it I don't know, man, because it's fun. Like I like to sit around and um have those types of conversations with people because I would rather talk about that than
Me too.
politics with or whatever.
Me too. Or book
Um,
covers.
yeah, or book covers. But no, like it's like, yeah, dude, just come with us. Like just
Mhm.
read this book and
Yeah.
like see what we're talking about.
But it's
Don't
hard, and it's easier to
yeah.
just be that like cynic
Yeah.
who's like, and it's funny because I've seen the motherfucker at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, you're fucking reading shit anyway. Like,
What I don't even know what popular books are other than
yeah,
like well like you Yuval Noah Harari,
yeah,
like shit
that's
like
true.
that. Like those are popular books, aren't they?
Think fast or whatever, slow. That was one. Because like all my professors are into those like New York Times bestsellers that are like written for
Yeah.
like And some of them aren't bad. Like I read Dopamine Nation, which was on Rogan, or like The Body Keeps Score, but like that's probably the most people
Yeah.
tarry with, or 12 Rules of Life. Maybe an edgy kid will pick up a copy of Ayn Rand still. I don't know. They used to do scholarships on
Well,
that in New York.
yeah, Ayn Rand, is Nietzsche
Nietzsche.
popular? Or people don't read
I don't think
Nietzsche
he's as
though.
popular
People
anymore. I
just
think it
say
was like
they've
our
read him.
time.
People
Yeah.
just say like, "Yeah, I've read Nietzsche," but they don't actually read Nietzsche.
No, because it's hard.
Yeah.
But they'll read books like about him,
They'll read
like
books about him, but they won't read
yeah,
him.
like
Yeah, yeah.
Plato and a platypus walks into a bar or something like that. But yeah, no, it just amazes me though, because like we are in a matrix,
Yep.
but it's like you can still tarry with
Hmm.
and try to pull the fucking Wizard of Oz, like peek behind the veil, and
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. We just both have different concerns
Hmm.
than one another,
Yeah.
and it's like you just do your thing. And I didn't respond, but I'm just like, why are so many people triggered by me doing a time lapse of a book I said I wanted to read for like 10 years?
That is interesting. The fact that people feel the need to react to it. Um, that is interesting for sure.
Yeah, like the hammock kid who's like, fucking read The Power of Now or whatever
Uh-huh.
instead. And then that guy, and I'm just like,
That's
bro, I
hilarious,
don't
dude.
fucking walk up to people and tell them what to read.
Maybe
It's not
maybe
my fucking business.
maybe we need to collectively regress and let
Yeah,
the edgy teenager out.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's what we need to do.
yeah.
No, I
I
don't
don't
think so.
know.
I don't
No,
think
I don't
so.
either. I don't think so. I don't want to go back to reading Descartes unless it's like to understand Heidegger.
That's exactly what Dave
Yeah,
and I did.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm
But
I'm glad we did.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't.
no. And it wasn't the whole like,
Yeah.
what if there's like an evil demon? I will
Yeah.
say I was talking to this girl who's overseas. I think she's Middle Eastern, and she was telling me she's starting to read Nietzsche, but like she's like going to library and getting philosophy books, and she's just trying to like think. She says she's like an anomaly and like weird, and doesn't
Yeah.
have anybody to talk to philosophy to. But like she was asking me about like eternal recurrence, and I was just like, in my head,
Nice.
I was like, I remember being 20,
Yeah.
because that was like the shit. I was like, oh, do I want to major in this or that? Ooh, Kierkegaard. But yeah, no, it's just like when you finally sit, not to derail this further, but when you finally sit and like tarry with something difficult, it's like when somebody posts, like, it goes back to the they shit. Because it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I could do that too, but it's pointless. Or like,
Yeah.
oh, he did a skateboarding trick, whatever, do it again. Or, oh,
Yeah.
you're using the wrong form for the squat. It's like, dude, just fuck off. Like, let
Yeah.
people fucking do them. It's not hurting anybody.
So it's kind of like, why can't you let people enjoy? Was that Tony that was talking about that? Why can't you let people just enjoy things?
Yeah, I think so.
Um, during the hip hop uh
Mhm.
mini
Yeah, I think
con.
so.
Um, yeah, what goes through people's mind when they can't let us, and it's not like we're doing this because we enjoy it. Like there is a directionality,
No.
there is an intentionality here with what we're doing.
Yeah, and I put that in the time lapse. I was like, I'm not going to be able to get off my phone long enough to read this if I don't record myself. I
Yeah.
wrote that. I said, this is to hold me accountable. And
Yeah.
I'm posting it so people know I'm doing it. So the big other holds me accountable.
But
I'm being transparent. Yeah.
people still feel the need to shit on it.
Yeah. When I was like 20, I used to be pretentious and be like, you got to read this shit. Now I'm just like, do whatever you want. Just help me read a fucking book, because
Right.
my attention span is shit otherwise.
Right. Right.
And they just, I don't know. It's sad. I don't know. We'll
Well,
write.
yeah,
Well,
dude. It is sad because we're all sad and we just don't want to be sad anymore.
that's
And so
true.
we're all just making noise because we
That's
want
true.
the big daddy to
Volume.
come fucking save us from our sadness. But no, it's up to us. We have to save ourselves. You got to dig
That's
yourself
true.
out of the shit.
I agree. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to derail it so long, but
Dude, not at all. We got all the fucking time.
that's
Well,
true.
we got all the time in the day anyway. Maybe
That's
not in the
true.
world, but in the day.
That's true.
Um, of course, this proof is not a casual inference. Causal. Of course, this proof is not a causal inference and is therefore not encumbered with the disadvantages which that would imply. Kant gives, as it were, an ontological proof in terms of the idea of a temporal entity. It seems at first as if Kant has given up the Cartesian approach of positing a subject one can come across in isolation, but only in semblance. That Kant demands any proof at all for the Dasein of things outside me shows already that he takes the subject, the in me, as the starting point for this problematic. Moreover, his proof itself is then carried through by starting with the empirically given changes in me. For only in me is time experienced, and time carries the burden of the proof. Time provides the basis for leaping off into what is outside of me in the course of the proof. Furthermore, Kant emphasizes that the problematical kind of idealism, which merely alleges our inability to prove by immediate experience that there is a Dasein outside of our own, is reasonable and accords with the sound kind of philosophical thinking, namely, to permit no decisive judgment until an adequate proof has been found. But even if the ontical priority of the isolated subject and inner experience should be given up, Descartes' position would still be retained ontologically. What Kant proves, if we may suppose that his proof is correct and correctly based, is that entities which are changing and entities which are permanent are necessarily present at hand together. But when two things which are present at hand are thus put on the same level, this does not as yet mean that subject and object are present at hand together. And even if this were proved, what is ontologically decisive would still be covered up, namely, the basic state of the subject, Dasein, as being in the world. The being present at hand together of the physical and the physical is completely different ontically and ontologically from the phenomenon of being in the world. That was of the physical and psychical is completely different. Kant presupposes both the distinction between the in me and the outside of me, and also the connection between these. Practically, he is correct in doing so, but he is incorrect from the standpoint of the tendency of his proof. It has not been demonstrated that the sort of thing which gets established about the being present at hand together of the changing and the permanent when one takes time as one's clue will also apply to the connection between the in me and the outside of me. But if one were to see the whole distinction between the inside and the outside, and the whole connection between them, which Kant's proof presupposes, and if one were to have an ontological conception of what has been presupposed in this presupposition, then the possibility of holding that a proof of the Dasein of things outside me is a necessary one which has yet to be given would collapse. The scandal of philosophy is not that this proof has yet to be given, but that such proofs are expected and attempted again and again. Such expectations, aims, and demands arise from an ontologically inadequate way of starting with something of such a character that independently of it and outside of it, a world is to be proved as present at hand. It is not that the proofs are inadequate, but that the kind of being of the entity which does the proving and makes requests for proofs has not been made definite enough. This is why a demonstration that two things which are present at hand are necessarily present at hand together can give rise to the illusion that something has been proved, or even can be proved, about Dasein as being in the world. If Dasein is understood correctly, it defies such proofs because in its being it already is what subsequent proofs deem necessary to demonstrate for it. If one were to conclude that since the being present at hand of things outside of us is impossible to prove, it must therefore be taken merely on faith, one would still fail to surmount this perversion of the problem. The assumption would remain that at bottom and ideally it must still be possible to carry out such a proof. This inappropriate way of approaching the problem is still endorsed when one restricts oneself to a faith in the reality of the external world, even if such a faith is explicitly acknowledged as such. Although one is not offering a stringent proof, one is still in principle demanding a proof and trying to satisfy that demand. Even if one should invoke the doctrine that the subject must presuppose, and indeed always does unconsciously presuppose the presence at hand of the external world, one would still be starting with the construct of an isolated subject. The phenomenon of being in the world is something that one would no more meet in this way than one would by demonstrating that the physical and the psychical are present at hand together. With such presuppositions, Dasein always comes too late. For insofar as it does this presupposing as an entity, and otherwise this would be impossible, it is as an entity already in the world. Earlier than any presupposition which Dasein makes, or any of its ways of behaving, is the a priori character of its state of being as one whose kind of being is care. To have faith in the reality of the external world, whether rightly or wrongly, to prove this reality for it, whether adequately or inadequately, to presuppose it, whether explicitly or not. Attempts such as these, which have not mastered their own basis with full transparency, presuppose a subject which is proximally worldless or unsure of its world, and which must at bottom first assure itself of a world. Thus, from the very beginning, being in a world is disposed to take things in some way, to suppose, to be certain, to have faith, a way of behaving which itself is always a founded mode of being in the world. The problem of reality, in the sense of the question whether an external world is present at hand and whether such a world can be proved, turns out to be an impossible one, not because its consequences lead to an inextricable impasse, to inextricable impasses, but because the very entity which serves as its theme is one which, as it were, repudiates any such formulation of the question. Our task is not to prove that an external world is present at hand, or to show how it is present at hand, but to point out why Dasein, as being in the world, has the tendency to bury the external world in nullity epistemologically before going on to prove it. The reason for this lies in Dasein's falling, and in the way in which the primary understanding of being has been diverted to being as presence at hand, a diversion which is motivated by that falling itself. If one formulates the question critically with such an ontological orientation, then what one finds present at hand as proximally and solely certain is something merely inner. After the primordial phenomenon of being in the world has been shattered, the isolated subject is all that remains, and this becomes the basis on which it gets joined together with a world. In this investigation, we cannot discuss at length the many attempts to solve the problem of reality, which have been developed in various kinds of realism and idealism and in positions which mediate between them. Certainly, a grain of genuine inquiry is to be found in each of these, but certain as this is, it would be just as perverse if one should want to achieve a tenable solution of the problem by reckoning up how much has been correct in each case. What is needed, rather, is the basic insight that while the different epistemological directions which have been pursued have not gone so very far off epistemologically, their neglect of any existential analytic of Dasein has kept them from obtaining any basis for a well secured phenomenal problematic. Nor is such a basis to be obtained by subsequently making phenomenological corrections on the concepts of subject and consciousness. Such a procedure would give no guarantee that the inappropriate formulation of the question would not continue to stand. Along
That
with,
reminds me of Wittgenstein too. Sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
The inappropriate formulation of the question would continue to stand. Like it's a nonsense question because it doesn't make sense because we're already here, as we keep saying. But I just wanted to say, like, it's definitely there.
Yeah, and it is weird that there is a tendency to think Heidegger and think, oh, he's just a phenomenologist, like he's just doing phenomenology.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, he's doing phenomenology, but he's critiquing phenomenology,
Yep.
like he does it to critique it. Um, and it's yeah, like it's almost silly. Like it comes to a point where it feels silly. Like he's saying, "Hey, it's silly to like doubt the chair that you're sitting on
Exactly.
in a way." Um, and
Because you're
that's
burying it at that point, like he's saying, like
yeah, yeah,
gaslighting yourself epistemologically.
yeah. Well, and yeah, I would be interested to see Heidegger today and to see how he dealt with like
Trump? No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, yeah, no. With like oh, like quantum shit. Like just
Hmm.
to see how he dealt with it or if he still maintained this position of like, well, yeah, but it's silly. Like you don't have to go that far because you've already made it past that functionally.
I
Like
know.
we functionally already um have solved all the,
Hmm.
Heisenberg's like uncertainty
Yeah.
principle. Like we've already solved that shit with our bodies.
Yep.
Because we are in the world and we live in the world and we do things in the world and like maybe up here we haven't figured it out, but our bodies have.
I want to see him versus Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that would be interesting. Like, I'm not even being funny, like, just in the sense that it, because I haven't, I've read a little bit on his critiques of science, but even in that phenomenology of religious life, he talks about what's different from philosophy and science and their methodology. So I think he'd be okay with them doing that as long as he's like,
Yeah, keep your chocolate out of
don't
my
make,
peanut
yeah,
butter. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like
But there
you're reverse engineering it in a sense.
yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah, no,
there are people who think that we have to do philosophy that way. Like, oh no, we
I
have to
know.
be doubt. We have to lead with doubt. We have to be unsure of everything. But like people do philosophy that way and it's silly. It's like, no,
It
you
doesn't get
don't.
anywhere.
Like we've already made it past. But also at the same time, we haven't even made it to like
Us.
where you think you are, but we've already made it past where you think you have to start. Like it's this weird fucked up like just
He's taking
incoherent
it back
mess.
to where the wrong turn is. Like,
Yeah.
at least according to Dugan, like the more like we're just tarrying with Heidegger alone, like I put Dugan down, I'm like, shit, he's right, at least with that.
Yeah.
Because he was saying that like he's bringing it back to how some of the pre-Socratics were right, or
Yeah.
at least where like his fundamental ontology is what's important, and that's what has been neglected. I had another seminar class that I dropped. It was on possible worlds. It was like a
Mm.
metaphysics class, and I was like, "Are we going to talk about like physics or anything like that?" And they're like, "No, no, no. We're going to like learn formal logic and talk about whether possible worlds exist or not." And I'm like, "We haven't even fucking like dove into this world and all that." So I was like, "I'm
Yeah.
good. I'll do the William James one instead."
Yeah. Well, and I mean that stuff's interesting and it's an interesting diversion,
Hmm.
but it's a
But it's not
diversion
my thing. Yeah, exactly. Like it's not gonna make a difference. We could do that after we feed and clothe people.
for
And
sure.
fucking like,
For sure.
and those people aren't making like a difference in the sense of illuminating what it is to be in the world.
Right. And and everybody, not everybody, but that is the thing that gets said about like a new school of thought or a new movement or a new figure, a new thinker or whatever. Like they're always saying like, yeah, he's telling us something about ourselves and what it means to be human. And it's like, no, you're not. Like you're just doing
Hey,
navel gazing.
yep,
Like, yeah, yeah, for sure.
agree with that.
All right.
Along with Dasein, I think.
Where the hell, along with Dasein as
Oh,
being the
along
world?
with Dasein as being in the world, entities within the world.
Yeah. Along with Dasein as being in the world, entities within the world have in each case already been disclosed. This existential ontological assertion seems to accord with the thesis of realism that the external world is really present at hand. Insofar as this existential assertion does not deny that entities within the world are present at hand, it agrees, doxographically as it were, with the thesis of realism and its results. But it differs in principle from every kind of realism. For realism holds that the reality of the world not only needs to be proved, but also is capable of proof. In the existential assertion, both of these positions are directly negated. But what distinguishes this assertion from realism altogether is the fact that in realism there is a lack of ontological understanding. Indeed, realism tries to explain reality ontically by real connections of interaction between things that are real. As compared with realism, idealism, no matter how contrary and untenable it may be in its results, has an advantage in principle, provided that it does not misunderstand itself as a psychological idealism. If idealism emphasizes that being and reality are only in the consciousness, this expresses an understanding of the fact that being cannot be explained through entities. But as long as idealism fails to clarify what this very understanding of being means ontologically, or how this understanding is possible, or that it belongs to Dasein's state of being, the interpretation of reality which idealism constructs is an empty one. Yet the fact that being cannot be explained through entities and that reality is possible only in the understanding of being does not absolve us from inquiring into the being of consciousness, or the res cogitans itself. If the idealist thesis is to be followed consistently, the ontological analysis of consciousness itself is prescribed as an inevitable prior task, only because being is in the consciousness. That is to say, only because it is understandable in Dasein, can Dasein also understand and conceptualize such characteristics of being as independence, the in itself, and reality in general. Only because of this are independent entities, as encountered within the world, accessible to circumspection. If what the term idealism says amounts to understanding that being can never be explained by entities, but is already that which is transcendental for every entity, then idealism affords the only correct possibility for a philosophical problematic. If so, Aristotle was no less an idealist than Kant. But if idealism signifies tracing back every entity to a subject or consciousness whose sole distinguishing features are that it remains indefinite in its being and is best characterized negatively as the unthing like, then this idealism is no less naive in its method than the most grossly militant realism. It is still possible that one may give the problematic of reality priority over any orientation in terms of standpoints by maintaining the thesis that every subject is what it is only for an object, and vice versa. But in this formal approach, the terms thus correlated, like the correlation itself, remain ontologically indefinite. At the bottom, however, the whole correlation necessarily gets thought of as somehow being, and must therefore be thought of with regard to some definite idea of being. Of course, if the existential ontological basis has been made secure beforehand by exhibiting being in the world, then this correlation is one that we can know later as a formalized relation, ontologically undifferentiated. Our discussion of the unexpressed presuppositions of attempts to solve the problem of reality in ways which are just epistemological shows that this problem must be taken back as an ontological one into the existential analytic of Dasein. You want to grab a B?
Yeah. My bad. I thought you meant B as in bathroom break, and then I was like, oh, we're on B. But I was gonna offer to grab it too. So two birds with one stone.
Yeah, man. Actually worked
Uh,
out. Perfect timing.
excellent. Yeah, I know we still have a ways to go, so I was like, let's get that out of the way. All right. B, reality as an ontological problem. If the term reality is meant to stand for the being of entities present at hand within the world res, and nothing else is understood thereby, then when it comes to analyzing this mode of being, this signifies that entities within the world are ontologically conceivable only if the phenomenon of within the worldness has been clarified. But within the worldness is based upon the phenomenon of the world, which for its part, as an essential item in the structure of being in the world, belongs to the basic constitution of Dasein. Being in the world, in turn, is bound up ontologically in the structural totality of Dasein's being, and we have characterized care as such a totality. But in this way, we have marked out the foundations and the horizons, which must be clarified if an analysis of reality is to be possible. Only in this connection, moreover, does the character of the in itself become ontologically intelligible. By making our orientation from this context of problems, we have in our earlier analyses interpreted the being of entities within the world. To be sure, the reality of the real can be characterized phenomenologically within certain limits without any explicit existential ontological basis. This is what Dilthey has attempted in the circle mentioned above, in the article mentioned above. He holds that the real gets experienced in impulse and will, and that reality is resistance, or more exactly, the character of resisting. He then works out the phenomenon of resistance analytically. This is the positive contribution of his article and provides the best concrete substantiation for his idea of a psychology which both describes and dissects. But he is kept from working out the analysis of this phenomenon correctly by the epistemological problematic of reality. The principle of phenomenality does not enable him to come to an ontological interpretation of the being of consciousness. Within the same consciousness, he writes, the will and its inhibition emerge. What kind of being belongs to this emerging? What is the meaning of the being of the within? What relationship of being does consciousness bear to the real itself? All this must be determined ontologically. That this has not been done depends ultimately on the fact that Dilthey has left life standing in such a manner that is ontologically differentiated. And of course, life is something which one cannot go back behind. But to interpret Dasein ontologically does not signify that we must go back ontically to some other entity. The fact that Dilthey has been refuted epistemologically cannot prevent us from making fruitful use of what is positive in his analyses, the very thing that has not been understood in such refutation. Sorry, I got the burps today. Thus, Scheller has recently taken up Dilthey's interpretation of reality. He stands for a voluntative theory of Dasein. Here, Dasein is understood in the Kantian sense as being present at hand. The being of objects is given immediately only in the way it is related to drive and will. Scheller not only emphasizes, as does Dilthey, that reality is never primarily given in thinking and apprehending. He also points out, particularly, that cognition itself is not judgment and that knowing is a relationship of being. What we have already said about the ontological indefiniteness of Dilthey's foundation holds in principle for this theory too. Nor can the fundamental ontological analysis of life be slipped in afterwards as a substructure. Such a fundamental analysis provides the supporting conditions for the analysis of reality. For the entire explication of the character of resisting and its phenomenal presuppositions, resistance is encountered in a not coming through and is encountered as a hindrance to willing to come through. With such willing, however, something must already have been disclosed. which one's drive and one's will are out for. But what they are out for is ontically indefinite, and this indefiniteness must not be overlooked ontologically or taken as if it were nothing. When being out for something comes up against resistance and can do nothing but come up against it, it is itself already alongside a totality of embodiments. But the fact that this totality has been discovered is grounded in the disclosedness of the referential totality of significance. The experiencing of resistance, that is the discovery of what is resistant to one's endeavors, is possible ontologically only by reason of the disclosedness of the world. The character of resisting is one that belongs to entities within the world. Practically, experiences of resistance determine only the extent and the direction in which entities encounter within the world are discovered. The summation of such experience does not introduce the disclosure of the world for the first time, but presupposes it. The against and the counter to as ontological possibilities are supported by disclosing being in the world. Nor is resistance experienced in a driver will, which emerges in its own right. These both turn out to be modifications of care. And here, not to bring up other philosophers again, I don't know if he's kind of hinting at Nietzsche in a sense, just because of will. But like Dave was saying, he doesn't really, other than Kant and like Dilthey, he doesn't really talk about other sources, or at least like where he, like, anxiety was very Kierkegaardian. Not to say it's only Kierkegaardian, because it's not, but it just makes me wonder.
Yeah, and the idea that like now to work with when you work with someone else's work, it's expected that you like directly say like, "Hey, I'm taking this from X, Y, and Z, and I'm
Mhm.
doing my own thing with it." Like that's kind of expected now. Um, but was it back then? I
Yeah, I
don't.
don't think it was as much.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or it could be because his lecture courses, he might have already like he's done so much work on other thinkers that I think he's probably like, you know who the fuck I am.
Yeah, like
And
they were in a milieu.
yeah,
And
that's
so he
true.
just assumed that the people he was talking to already knew what he was talking about.
Yeah,
And he
no, that's true.
definitely loved Nietzsche. Like he
Oh
definitely
yeah.
did. So I do think
Hmm.
he is talking about Nietzsche,
Oh
but
yeah.
he doesn't directly say it. So I don't know.
No. Just makes you think. And
Yeah.
then again, like will presupposes the thing that is willing, the like the fact that your being is an issue for itself. I just like how he keeps showing it. Like the reality wouldn't be a problem for you unless like you were here to question it.
Yeah.
Consciousness is within. He's just
Dude, I'm
laying it out.
s- this is off track, but yeah, I am looking forward to reading the history concept of time with you
Oh yeah.
cuz
Oh yeah,
it's
I'm down, dude.
dude, it's dope. Like
I'm excited.
I'm excited for you to read it. It's the shit.
Hell
I'm
yeah.
I'm glad I
Excellent.
went into it. So
Oh yeah. Excellent. No, it should be cool. All right. Let me get my ADHD back on track. Um, Nor is resistance experienced in a driver will, which emerges in its own right. These both turn out to be modifications of care. Only entities within this kind of being can come up against something resistant or something within the world. So, if reality gets defined as the character of resisting, we must notice two things first: that this is only one character of reality among others. Second, that the character of resisting presupposes necessarily a world which already has been disclosed. Resistance characterizes the external world in the sense of entities within the world, but never in the sense of the world itself. Consciousness of reality is itself a way of being in the world. Every problematic of the external world comes back necessarily to the basic existential phenomenon. If the coach of sum is to serve as the point of departure for the existential analytic of Dasein, that it needs to be turned around. And furthermore, its content needs new ontological phenomenal confirmation. The sum, the sum is then asserted first, and indeed in the sense that I am in a world. As such an entity, I am in the possibility of being towards various ways of comporting myself, namely cogitations, as ways of being alongside entities within the world. Descartes, on the contrary, says that cogitones are present at hand, and that in these, an ego is present at hand too, as a worldless res cogitans.
I love that
Oh,
paragraph.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That just sums it up perfectly, his critique, in my opinion. But again, that paragraph would make no sense if it didn't take all the legwork to get us here,
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of directionality in this text. There's a lot of locality in this text. And like
Mm-hmm.
not just because that's what he's talking about, but he actually manages to do that with the way he introduces concepts and then fleshes them out and then brings them back in later and fleshes them out more. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is a very spatial book.
Mm-hmm. No, that's
Um
true.
and in a yeah, it's awesome.
And that's what makes me think too, Dave's right in the fact that it's like he had other divisions planned out, but he just didn't, either gave it up because he was working on other stuff like later Heidegger, or it's like because Division One is methodical, and I'm sure Division Two is similar. And I was listening to Dreyfus. I'm trying not to like refer to him as much, and I know I can in Division Two, really. But even he was like reading a passage here, and he's like, "Oh, I don't even know if Heidegger knew what that meant." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." Heidegger seems now like, if you trust him,
Yeah.
to be laying out the combo. So,
One, I do think like some of his later stuff does get less interesting. Like
mhm,
some of the later work is just like, okay, that's weird. And
yeah,
um, they're
read Hannah Arendt at that point.
yeah, but this history of the concept of time and being in time, like this is
His
fucking
lecture courses.
yeah, like this shit is on point.
No,
Uh,
I agree. He's been tiring with this shit for like a decade, dude, before he wrote it. So that makes me think too that he's like, no, I know what the fuck I'm talking about, and you need to fucking let me take you there. Like, buckle up,
yeah,
honestly. So it's good. I can do C2 though, pretty
cool.
short. Reality and care. Reality, as an ontological term, is one which we have related to entities within the world. If it serves to designate this kind of being in general, then readiness to hand and presence at hand function as modes of reality. If, however, one lets this word have its traditional signification, then it stands for being in the sense of the pure presence at hand of things. But not all presence at hand is the presence at hand of things. The nature by which we are surrounded is, of course, an entity within the world, but the kind of being which it shows belongs neither to the ready at hand nor to what is present at hand as things of nature. No matter how this being of nature may be interpreted, all the modes of being of entities within the world are founded ontologically upon the worldhood of the world, and accordingly upon the phenomenon of being in the world. From this, there arises the insight that among the modes of beings of entities within the world, reality has no priority, and that reality is a kind of being which cannot even characterize anything like the world or Dasein in a way which is ontologically appropriate. In order of the ways in which things are connected in their ontological foundations, and in the order of any possible categorical and existential demonstration, reality is referred back to the phenomenon of care, and that's italicized. But the fact that reality is ontologically grounded in the being of Dasein does not signify that only when Dasein exists, and as long as Dasein exists, can the real be as that which in itself it is. Of course, only as long as Dasein is, that is, only as long as an understanding of being is optically possible, is there being. When Dasein does not exist, independence is not either, nor is the in itself. In such a case, this sort of thing can be neither understood nor not understood. In such a case, even entities within the world can neither be discovered nor lie hidden. In such a case, it cannot be said that entities are, nor can it be said that they are not. But now, as long as there is an understanding of being, and therefore an understanding of presence at hand, it can indeed be said that in this case, entities will still continue to be. As we have noted, being, not entities, is dependent upon the understanding of being. That is to say, reality, not the real, is dependent upon care. By this dependency, our further analytic of Dasein is held secure in the face of an uncritical interpretation, which nevertheless keeps urging itself upon us. An interpretation in which the idea of reality is taken as the clue to Dasein. Only if we take our orientation from existentiality as interpreted in an ontologically positive manner can we have any guarantee that in the factical course of the analysis of consciousness or of life, some sense of reality does not get made basic, even if it is one which has not been further differentiated. Entities within Dasein's kind of being cannot be conceived in terms of reality and substantiality. We have expressed this by the thesis that the substance of man is existence. Yet, if we have interpreted existentiality as care and distinguished this from reality, this does not signify that our existential analytic is at an end. We have merely allowed the intricate problems of the question of being and its possible modes, and the question of the meaning of such modifications to emerge more sharply only if the understanding of being is, do entities as entities become accessible. Only if entities are of Dasein's kind of being is the understanding of being possible as an entity. 44. Did you want to talk about?
I mm, I no. I don't want to go where I was gonna go.
Okay.
I Yeah, just the world of care, the fact that we're already here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just that defeats so much of the silly bullshit.
Yep.
I don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater though.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting, and I think you can probably get a lot from doing that type of like, hyper skeptical, you
Mm-hmm.
know, what if we're Boltzmann brains, blah 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 blah. I think there's a lot there, but if you're doing this and you are trying to apply it to the human experience,
Mm-hmm.
um Heidegger is like defeating all that wishy-washy hippy-dippy bullshit that will
Mm-hmm.
just derail you. Like if you're coming from the position of I am a human and I want to investigate the world of being human, um listen to fucking Heidegger.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do other shit, if you just want to, look at your belly button, and that's all fine and dandy. And again, I don't think you should throw the baby out with
Particle
the bathwater.
accelerators.
Yeah. But when it comes to the world of human beings,
Mm-hmm.
fucking listen to Heidegger.
No, I agree. And I like how he's even saying, like, not to go all Bill Clinton, but what is, because they keep using is and they're presupposing being. So I don't think he's saying, don't do science, don't do this other shit. But it's like, no, what the fuck? the is
Mhm,
if you're
mhm.
proclaiming like, hey, I'm science, philosophy's useless, here's me telling you some stuff. And it's like, okay, what's
Yeah.
the is? How's your methodology? Because like even the philosophy of science is really important,
Yep.
linguistics, other stuff. But like you said, don't throw the baby out with bathwater, but also his criticisms are valid and you need to tackle being before you can truly tackle metaphysics or anything. Like do that fundamental ontology and then you can kind of
Yeah,
dive
and
into it.
also the people that are doing all that other stuff haven't done this fundamental ontology, haven't tarried with being in the world, being there. Like they
Mm-hmm.
haven't done that. Um, but they're acting as if, and they're saying they have, and they're
Mm-hmm.
marketing whatever it is they're doing. They're marketing that as if they're like, yes, this is awesome and this will liberate humankind. Um, and no, it won't. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, like
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a great example for this because he does talk about how science is the liberator and the emancipator and blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. And in a sense, okay, I'm willing to entertain that. But
Mm-hmm.
um no, science is very functional, it's very utilitarian. It can do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things for us. But like we are the ones having things done for us. It's not like we have to chase science. It's not like, oh, we have to um view our own experience from the scientific point of view and turn ourselves into, I mean, we are turning ourselves into robots because the
Mm-hmm.
scientific view of the world has taken over. Everything has become mechanized, everything has become mathematized, everything has to have concrete labels, everything has to
Mm-hmm.
have discrete parts, everything has to be interchangeable
The
and
present at
fungible
hand.
and present at hand, very 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 present at hand. um yeah,
It's dangerous though.
it is dangerous because it gave us the world wars.
Mhm.
It
And
gave
it
us
can
the
give
Nazi
you like
fucking party.
Hitler, yeah, where it's like, oh, a Jew's not a person, so I can dissect them for scientific progress. And yeah, it like helped in the long term, but it's evil.
That's why this
Yeah,
shit fucking
matters.
matters.
Yeah. And it's just ironic because he's a fascist, but it's like, put that aside,
Hmm.
what he's describing is true in the sense that like it matters. And I was gonna say too, Neil deGrasse Tyson wouldn't fucking do science if he didn't care about it
Yeah.
and prove the scientific validity of that. And then I was gonna say too, have you seen that stupid fucking Key and Peele skit about Neil deGrasse Tyson?
The one with his
His
wife?
wife's yeah.
Yeah, dude.
And it's like that's what I'm thinking about. So it's like, well, I'm not cheating on you. It's just the atoms that are colliding, and
Yeah.
technically we never touch. And it's like, but cheating fucking hurts and matters. But from a scientific point of view, like
Yeah.
we're all stardust.
Yeah, man.
And
Yeah, I love it, man. And yeah, we are um we're bulldozing the forest.
mm-hmm. Oh
We're not
yeah, that's true.
we're not even like not literally. I mean, we literally are bulldozing
Yeah,
forests, but like this figurative, the
figuratively too, like
clearing,
the clearing. Yeah.
we're just bulldozing the forest. We're eradicating the possibility for our own clearings with this total
Mm-hmm.
mathematized point of you know,
Oh yeah.
instrumentalized view on the world. Um and we have to deal with it, man. We have to get through that.
And then we can do actual science because then it's like, okay,
Yeah, then we can
we
have Star
realize what
Trek.
matters. Yeah, exactly. And
But
Hannah Arendt and Foucault and Marcuse, who we were talking about earlier, we're not going to have these fucking people if we don't have Heidegger.
mhm.
So it's like Dave's saying, like, if you truly want to be taken seriously, you need to tarry with it and you need to sit with it. And I'm not saying this to like say like, oh, I'm the shit because I'm not, but it's like this shit matters.
No,
And it's
this
like you
everything
more than
after
particle accelerators to me. It's
everything after
cool.
everything after Heidegger came through Heidegger.
Mm-hmm.
We need to, and we need to put ourselves through Heidegger so we can really understand our situatedness, our
Mm-hmm.
current conditions. Um
It's
And
like throwing Freud out completely.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Um, but people want to do that, and people want to do all this cool postmodern shit. And I like postmodernism, sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I like my version of postmodernism.
I
I
love
don't,
records.
yeah. But I don't know, man. Like this shit really truly does matter. And it's like people didn't go through it at all. People just jumped over it.
Like you said, the cliff notes, and it's
Yep.
like, yeah, you can get, like Anna was saying about her bachelor's degree, how she didn't read any primary text. And Anna's no dummy, and she's talking about like sociology, and that's what I'm getting a degree in. And I learned some shit, but I guarantee you, I would have learned a hell of a lot more if we sat and like read Durkheim, we read Weber, we tarried with it, and
That's
it's like everybody wants the fucking easy button, even colleges, because they know kids won't focus on it. But it's
yeah,
like you
man.
need to bring back that rigor or that, and it goes back to time energy,
Yep.
because it's like most people can't sit there and fuck. Because the minute you sit there and you record yourself reading Heidegger or whatever, people are gonna be like, "Why the fuck you doing that?
Yeah.
Watch Netflix for 4 hours instead, or like
Yeah.
go get laid." I'm like, okay. So, moral of the story: read Heidegger.
Moral of the story, everything, everything that has gone on and is currently going on at Theory Underground, like taking it all together. So we started off doing the idea of the university, then we
Mm,
did the PMC, um, then we did For They Don't Know What They Do. And I think that was more sensational and it was awesome and I appreciate it.
mm,
But I think like starting at the idea of the university and then going through the PMC and then doing this, being in time,
mm,
along with the critical media theory at the
yeah.
same time,
Oh
like
yeah, it's a game changer.
yeah, like taking this critical media theory and being in time together, it's accelerating my understanding of being in time. It's also giving me so much more that I can take back to McLuhan and to
Mm,
Postman and to Sherry Turkle. Like it's
Barbie.
just so synergistic. Yeah, even Barbie. Like
Yeah.
watching the Barbie movie last night, I got more out of it because of what I'm engaged in at Theory Underground. Because
Mm,
I know I would have gone and I would have seen it, and I probably would have had similar thoughts, but I wouldn't have had as deep
the
insight
clearing. Yeah.
into like my and it's I fucking love it, dude. I love it. It's
No,
the shit.
absolutely. It's necessary,
Yeah.
and I just think it's important, and that's why I signed up for the critical media theory, because Dave like sent me the first lecture, and I'm reading McLuhan and this other stuff, and then I was reading Turco, and I'm like, wait a minute, like this shit's clicking.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hannah Arendt on top of Heidegger,
Yeah. Dude,
it's like,
a rent on top of Heidegger is like
yeah,
boom, blast off into fucking
yeah.
space,
I
dude.
like when he calls it the expansion pack.
Yeah.
It's the expansion pack and the rumble pack at the same
Yeah.
time.
It
It's
is.
just,
It's the shit.
oh, no, I agree.
And
I think,
this last hefty section is going to
yeah,
be the final section of this chapter,
oh yeah,
and it's a hefty one.
yeah, it's a dude. I will say though, by doing the exegetical reading, I had a much better understanding of 43 than I did on my own originally. Sometimes it's just like reading it out loud,
Mm-hmm.
bouncing it back, but it's starting to click. I'm not saying I know everything or understand it, but
No,
it's definitely useful.
yeah, dude. Like I I love this new mode of reading.
Hmm.
Um, and I just want more and more people to really truly engage with it because it really does multiply
Hmm.
your ability to read and comprehend and
Hmm.
reincorporate and understand. Um, it's a range extender.
Hmm. No,
Like
that's a good way of putting it.
it's amazing, dude. I love doing these reading sessions.
Like, no, 100%. I did a couple with my friends on like Turkle and other stuff for the digital media theory, and even they're not big readers. And they were like, "Hey man, that was awesome! Like I had fun doing it. It really made me think." And they were like talking about shit they wouldn't normally talk about. And they're not dumb guys, but they were
But
like, everybody has this
they're thrown.
yearning. Yeah,
They're thrown and you give them that opportunity to kind of get out of that and put a critical eye on their own life. And
good point.
that's a value that you can't explain that to someone. You have to show
No.
them. You have to show someone what it's like to get outside of that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's fucking amazing, dude.
Hmm.
I'm becoming an evangelist. Like I'm 10
Yeah,
years from
no,
now,
it's
I'm gonna
true
be like a
though.
loony
Hell yeah,
motherfucker. Like, read
I'm
a book,
down.
bitch. But I'd like,
You're gonna be like the Jizik in that movie where it's the hologram Nats,
yeah,
like for rich people.
yeah. I
You're in
want to
a
be your
cave.
reading book buddy. Like that's all I'm gonna do is just
That'd be
like
cool.
read books with
That's your
people on the internet.
ASMR.
Yeah.
Nance exegetically reads to you Heidegger.
Yeah.
Spicy chip. No,
Spice, yeah. And we'll incorporate like
yeah.
bits or whatever the fuck they call it. So someone will hit a button. Ooh, spicy
Yeah.
chip. Ooh, spicy
We'll
chip.
have her under the screen
Yeah.
instead of Subway Surfers.
Yeah.
That'd be perfect.
Oh, actually that would be a fun project for the CMT course. Like
Hmm.
build out
Oh
something
yeah.
like that. That would be
Oh
fun.
yeah. No, I agree. Do you want me to keep going with this one and then switch in a bit, or how do you want to do it?
Um, I'll start
Okay.
and then we'll just
Tag team.
yeah, we'll flip flop.
Okay. Sounds good. Us.
Section 44, Dasein, disclosedness, and truth. From time immemorial, philosophy has associated truth and being. Parmenides was the first to discover the being of entities, and he identified being with the perceptive understanding of being. Aristotle, in outlining the history of how the oh my god, dude, what is that?
I think I have it in the Dugan book. If you give me a
Yeah,
second, because it looks familiar. He like quotes that shit. I think it's logos.
it's either Logos or Althea.
Yeah, it's logo. Oh wait, no, I think it's logos.
Let me see if it's in this. Oh, is it in the footnote?
It
No,
might
there
be.
is no
Oh
footnote.
no, I yeah, it's in the back, the footnote, but the Kindle one has it. If you give me a second,
Okay, cool.
the passage may be translated more than one way. For thought and being are the same thing. Fairbanks. It is the same thing that can be thought and that can be, and that's the only one it translates.
Damn.
That's XX though. I don't know if that's yeah, that was it. That was the Aristotle, and then XXI. It just says more Aristotle metaphysics. But I've seen that Greek before, and I'm trying to see if it's in the Dugan. But the problem is I've seen Greek in different,
Uh-huh.
and that
Is it
uh,
Althea?
yeah, it might be. I think that's it. Truth, like
Yeah. I'm unsure. I'm thinking it's Althea, but
I think you're right.
um
While you read, I'll look in
yeah,
this,
that's
and I'll
awesome.
tell you if I find it.
See, that's another awesome thing about groups is the ability to tag team shit.
Mhm. No, absolutely.
Okay, so from time immemorial, philosophy has associated truth and being. Parmenides was the first to discover the being of entities, and he identified being with the perceptive understanding of being. Aristotle, in outlining the history of how that Greek word have been uncovered, emphasizes that the philosophers before him, under the guidance of the things themselves, have been compelled to inquire further. More Greek, he is describing the same fact when he says, more Greek, that he, Parmenides, was compelled to follow that which showed itself in itself. In another passage, he remarks that these thinkers carried on their researches, more Greek, compelled by the truth itself. Aristotle describes these researches, more Greek, philosophizing about the truth, or even as exhibiting something and letting it be seen with regard to the truth and within the range of the truth. Philosophy itself is defined as the science of the truth. But it is
That was truth, by the way. The
okay.
first one.
Okay. Um philosophy is defined as the science of the truth, but it is also characterized as a science which, but it is also characterized as
I
a
have the
science
translation
which
for that if you
contemplates
want to.
entities as entities, that is, with regard to their being. Yeah, if you want to, yeah, if you want to read that translation.
The very fact showed them the way and joined in forcing them to investigate the subject.
Okay, the very fact, say it, what?
The very fact showed them the way and joined in forcing them to investigate the subject. The footnotes are all the way in the back of the text, at least for the Marquis and Robinson one. But the
Okay,
Kindle one like puts it,
in line.
no, it puts it like the next page.
Oh, that's
So it's like
interesting.
I was flip flopping between the two, but it doesn't translate everything. So like the XXVII just says Ibid and tells you where in Aristotle.
Oh,
But I think Heidegger for some of them makes his own interpretation. Like after XXVI, the Science of Truth,
mm-hmm.
and then the last one that I quoted, a science which contemplates entities and entities. The actual quote is the very fact showed them the way of joining them and forcing them to investigate the subject. So even that phenomenology of religious experience, the translators were saying that a lot of times Heidegger kind of twist shit, which everybody does,
For
to
sure,
fit like his
for
his
sure.
shtick. But
Well, and I mean, listen, we're reading Heidegger right now.
yeah, no, exactly.
We're not reading Parmenides.
Aristotle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm willing to be generous with Heidegger.
Oh yeah, same. And I do that shit too. Like if you're like, how many people when you're reading like a science book, like a popular one, or like the whole like social sciences one, so paraphrase like quote and then have a million ellipses because
Yep.
they're like twisting it. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Contemplates entities as entities, that is, with regard to their being. What is signified here by carrying on researches into the truth by science of the truth? In such researches, is truth made a theme as it would be in a theory of knowledge or of judgment? Manifestly not, for truth signifies the same as thing, something that shows itself. But what then does the expression truth signify if it can be used as a term for entity and being? If, however, truth rightfully has a primordial connection with being, then the phenomenon of truth comes within the range of the problematic of fundamental ontology. In that case, must not this phenomenon have been encountered already within our preparatory fundamental analysis, the analytic of Dasein? What ontico-ontological connection does truth have with Dasein and with that ontical characteristic of Dasein which we call the understanding of being? Can the reason why being necessarily goes together with truth and vice versa be pointed out in terms of such understanding? These questions are not to be evaded, because being does indeed go together with truth. The phenomenon of truth has already been one of the themes of our earlier analyses, though not explicitly under this title. In giving precision to the problem of being, it is now time to delimit the phenomenon of truth explicitly and to fix the problems which it comprises. In doing this, we should not just take together what we have previously taken apart. Our investigation requires a new approach. Our analysis takes its departure from the traditional conception of truth and attempts to lay bare the ontological foundations of that conception. A. In terms of these foundations, the primordial phenomenon of truth becomes visible. We can then exhibit the way in which the traditional conception of truth has been derived from this phenomenon. B. Our investigation will make it plain that to the question of the essence of truth, there belongs necessarily the question of the kind of being which truth possesses. Together with this, we must clarify the ontological meaning of the kind of talk in which we say that there is truth, and we must also clarify the kind of necessity with which we must presuppose that there is truth. C. A. The traditional conception of truth and its ontological foundations. There are three theses which characterize the way in which the essence of truth has been traditionally taken and the way it is supposed to have been first defined. One, that the locus of truth is assertion or judgment. Two, that the essence of truth lies in the agreement of the judgment with its object. And three, that Aristotle, the father of logic, not only has assigned truth to the judgment as its primordial locus, but has set going to the definition of truth as agreement. Here, it is not our aim to provide a history of the concept of truth, which could be presented only on the basis of a history of ontology. We shall introduce our analytical discussions by alluding to some familiar matters. Aristotle says that the soul's experience its representations are likenings of things. Okay, so Aristotle says that the soul's experience its representations are likenings of things. Okay, so yeah, that is semiotics. That's okay.
Yep.
This assertion, which is by no means proposed as an explicit definition of the essence of truth, has also given occasion for developing the later formulation of the essence of truth as adequatio intellectus et re. Thomas Aquinas, who refers this definition to Avicenna, who in turn has taken it over from Isaac Israeli's 10th century Book of Definitions, also uses for adequatio likening the terms correspondentia, correspondence, and conventia, coming together. The Neo-Kantian epistemology of the 19th century often characterized this definition of truth as an expression of a methodologically retarded, naive realism, and declared it to be irreconcilable with any formulation of this question which has undergone Kant's Copernican revolution. But Kant too adhered to this conception of truth, so much so that he did not even bring it up for discussion. This has been overlooked, though Brentano has already called our attention to it. The old and celebrated question with which it was supposed that one might drive the logicians into a corner is this: what is truth? The explanation of the name of truth, namely, that it is the agreement of knowledge with its object, will here be granted and presupposed. If truth consists in the agreement of knowledge with its object, then this object must thus be distinguished from others. For knowledge is false if it does not agree with the object to which it is related, even if it should contain something which might well be valid for other objects. And in the introduction of the transcendental dialectic, Kant states, truth and illusion are not in the object so far as it is intuited, but in the judgment about it so far as it is thought. Of course, this characterization of truth as agreement is very general and empty, yet it will still have some justification if it can hold its own without prejudice to any of the most various interpretations which that distinctive predicate, knowledge, will support. We are now inquiring into the foundations of this relation. What else is tacitly posited in this relational totality of the adequatio intellectus et re? And what ontological character does that which is thus posited have itself? What in general does one have in view when one uses the term agreement? The agreement of something with something has the formal character of a relation of something to something. Every agreement, and therefore truth as well, is a relation. But not every relation is an agreement. A sign points at what is indicated. Such indicating is a relation, but not an agreement of the sign with what is indicated. Yet manifestly, not every agreement is a conniventia, coming together, of the kind that is fixed upon in the definition of truth. The number 6 agrees with 16 minus 10. These numbers agree. They are equal with regard to the question of how much. Equality is one way of agreeing. Its structure is such that something like a with regard to belongs to it. In the adequatio, something gets related. What is that with regard to which it agrees? In clarifying the truth relation, we must notice also what is peculiar to the terms of this relation. With regard to what do intellectus and res agree? In their kind of being and their essential content, do they give us anything at all with regard to which they can agree? If it is impossible for intellectus and res to be equal because they are not of the same species, are they then perhaps similar? But knowledge is still supposed to give the thing just as it is. This agreement has the relational character of the just as. In what way is this relation possible as a relation between intellectus and res? From these questions, it becomes plain that to clarify the structure of truth is not enough simply to presuppose this relational totality, but we must go back and inquire into the context of being, which provides the support for this totality as such. Must we, however, bring up here the epistemological problematic as regards the subject-object relation? Or can our analysis restrict itself to interpreting the immanent consciousness of truth and thus remain within the sphere of the subject? According to the general opinion, what is true is knowledge, but knowledge is judging. In judgment, one must distinguish between the judging as a real physical process and that which is judged as an ideal content. It will be said of the latter that it is true. The real physical process, however, is either present at hand or not. According to this opinion, the ideal content of judgment stands in a relationship of agreement. This relationship thus pertains to a connection between an ideal content of judgment and the real thing is that which is judged about. Is this agreement real or ideal in its kind of being, or neither of these? How are we to take ontologically the relation between an ideal entity and something that is real and present at hand? Such a relation indeed subsists, and in factical judgments it subsists not only as a relation between the content of judgment and the real object, but likewise as a relation between the ideal content and the real act of judgment. And does it manifestly subsist more inwardly in this latter case? And again, Heidegger asks leading questions. So
Yep.
these question marks mean yes. He's rhetorically asking this question to, I guess, to get you invested in and bring you along rather than just talk at you. He's bringing you along for the ride.
Kind of like a dialogue, because he does say we a lot and other things like that, but it's like he's just telling us how it is.
Yeah, and it's I think it's considerate of him. I think he's taking our our own care into account. He's giving us the opportunity to take part in the discovery of this rather than just saying things at us. He really is bringing us with him.
Yeah, he's taking us through the forest to the clearing.
Yep.
And like Dave said, like the breakdown kind of is occurring, and now he's like helping you pick up your feet.
Yep.
And he's like,
yeah,
on, dust off.
He knocks your books out of your hand, and then he helps you pick them back up.
It's a Sour Patch Kid.
Yeah. Or is the ontological meaning of the relation between real and ideal something about which we must not inquire? Yet the relation is to be one which subsists. What does such subsisting mean ontologically? Why should this not be a legitimate question? Is it accidental that no headway has been made with this problem in over 2,000 years? Has the question already been perverted in the very way it has been approached, in the ontologically unclarified separation of the real and the ideal? And with regard to the actual judging of what is judged, is the separation of the real act of judgment from the ideal content altogether unjustified? Does not the actuality of knowing and judging get broken asunder into two ways of being, two levels which can never be pieced together in such a manner as to reach the kind of being that belongs to knowing? Is not psychologism correct in holding out against this separation, even if it neither clarifies ontologically the kind of being which belongs to the thinking of that which is thought, nor is even so much as acquainted with it as a problem? If we go back to the distinction between the act of judgment and its content, we shall not advance our discussion of the question of the kind of being which belongs to the adequatio, we shall only make plain the indispensability of clarifying the kind of being which belongs to knowledge itself. In the analysis which this necessitates, we must at the same time try to bring into view a phenomenon which is characteristic of knowledge, the phenomenon of truth. When does truth become phenomenally explicit in knowledge itself? It does so when such knowing demonstrates itself as true. By demonstrating itself, it is assured of its truth. Thus, in the phenomenal context of demonstration, the relationship of agreement must become visible. Let us suppose that someone with his back turned to the wall makes the true assertion that the picture on the wall is hanging askew. This assertion demonstrates itself when the man who makes it turns round and perceives the picture hanging askew on the wall. What gets demonstrated in this demonstration? What is the meaning of confirming such an assertion? Do we, let us say, ascertain some agreement between our knowledge, or what is known, and the thing on the wall? Yes and no, depending upon whether our interpretation of the expression what is known is phenomenally appropriate. If he who makes the assertion judges without perceiving the picture, but merely represents it to himself, to what is he related? To representations, shall we say? Certainly not, if representation is here supposed to signify representing as a physical process. Nor is he related to representations in the sense of what is thus represented, if what we have in mind here is a picture of that real thing which is on the wall. The asserting which merely represents is related, rather, in that sense which is most its own, to the real picture on the wall. What one has in mind is the real picture, and nothing else. Any interpretation in which something else is here slipped in as what one supposedly has in mind in an assertion that merely represents belies the phenomenal facts of the case as to that about which the assertion gets made. Asserting is a way of being towards the thing itself that is. And what does one's perceiving of it demonstrate? Nothing else than that this thing is the very entity which one has in mind in one's assertion. What comes up for confirmation is that this entity is pointed out by the being in which the assertion is made, which being is towards what is put forward in the assertion. Thus, what is to be confirmed is that such being uncovers the entity towards which it is. What gets demonstrated is the being uncovering of the assertion. In carrying out such a demonstration, the knowing remains related solely to the entity itself. In this entity, the confirmation, as it were, gets enacted. The entity itself, which one has in mind, shows itself just as it is in itself. That is to say, it shows that in its self-sameness, in its self-sameness is just as it gets pointed out in the assertion as being, just as it gets uncovered as being. Representations do not get compared, either among themselves or in relation to the real thing. What is to be demonstrated is not an agreement of knowing with its object, still less of the psychical with the physical, but neither is it an agreement between contents of consciousness among themselves. What is to be demonstrated is solely the being uncovered of the entity itself, that entity in the how of its uncoveredness. This uncoveredness is confirmed when that which is put forward in the assertion, namely the entity itself, shows itself as that very same thing. Confirmation signifies the entity showing itself in its self-sameness. The confirmation is accomplished on the basis of the entity showing itself. This is possible only in such a way that the knowing which asserts and which gets confirmed is, in its ontological meaning, itself a being towards real entities and a being that uncovers. To say that an assertion is true signifies that it uncovers the entity as it is in itself. Such an assertion points out, lets the entity be seen in its uncoveredness. The being truth of the assertion must be understood as being uncovering. Thus, truth has by no means the structure of an agreement between knowing and the object in the sense of a likening of one entity, the subject, to another, the object. Being true as being uncovered is in turn ontologically possible only on the basis of being in the world. This latter phenomenon, which we have known as the basic state of Dasein, is the foundation for the primordial phenomenon of truth. We shall now follow this up more penetratingly. And if you want to.
Yeah, no, I'll take it. I think the crux of that was right. For me, it has it on 219, where the paragraph starts being true as being uncovering with the asterisk is in turn ontologically possible only on the basis of being in the world. So I think it's just again him talking about how true is the sense of what we uncover, like that clearing. It's a process and a way of like being as opposed to just a correspondence theory or like subject to objects.
Yeah, and it
Just,
it is like it's a so I have been trying to come up with ways to describe it, with words to describe it.
mm-hmm.
And in my head, I like the idea of it's like a necessarily collaborative tautology, in
Okay,
where
yeah,
it's not like there's a subject object, but it is like there are beings,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and together they are uncovering what is there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that my table and I are on the same level of being, but it is to say that I have a table in my head, and the table, like the ideal, my own personal ideal table, is not my table, even if my personal ideal table is based on my physical table in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think something about my personal ideal table that's in my head, if I think something about that, I'm not thinking it about the real table that's in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not
It's
uncovering
true.
anything about the real table that's in the world. If I discover something about my table in the real world, then I can like reincorporate it back into my
Mm-hmm.
imaginary brain table. But like truth is already in the world, and we're
Mm-hmm.
uncovering it,
Yes.
and it's being disclosed. And so it is tautological in a way of like it's already there.
Yeah.
And the truth lies in the uncovering, not in the agreement.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that because we can have different discoveries in a
Exactly.
sense.
Exactly.
The whole do you see the same red as me, but it's like that is uncovering for you and you're coming to the clear. No, it's just funny because I was thinking about like how much Plato hated like the fact that we had real tables,
Yeah.
and it's like Heidegger is kind of like the opposite in a sense, if I'm understanding him correctly. I know it's more complicated than that, in the sense like he's not saying like that real table out there, the one in your head is like bad, because you could
No.
have your like foreconception of what a table is when you're doing your whole like when you're building one, and it's probably like involvements and in that context. But if you're trying to like discover something about your table, you need to like uncover it in the sense of seeing your fucking table and like eating on it and like hitting your fucking head on it or whatever.
Yeah, Heidegger is concerned with reality as reality, rather than
Mm-hmm.
as this like metaphysical ideal uh thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's both like a weird idealism, but also like a staunch materialism. Like it's both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Um
No, that's
and
true.
yeah, I don't know, man. Like I want to be able to like describe it, because I like it clicks. It's like, oh yeah, man, I fucking fuck yeah, I'm on board with that. But I also can't describe it, can't explain it out,
Mm-hmm.
like other than in like dumb, yeah, it's like this, dude. Ha ha ha.
No, yeah, I got
Um,
you.
but yeah, it's fucking gnarly, dude. Like Heidegger's like Yeah, I don't care. I'm more concerned with real shit that's really going on for real in real life.
Hmm. Sorry, I was looking up the Greek that he's using next, but it's all over the place. It's
Yeah,
saying
dude.
speech for one of them, so
That
I
is
don't
that
know.
logos.
I think so. I want to empty my goldfish bladder real quick, and
Tight,
then I'll dive into this
tight.
BRB.
Ouch. Yeah, this fucking Greek. Motherfuckers should just speak English like the rest of the world. That's probably the one thing that bothers me the most. Um, like someone needs to take it upon themselves. And to be honest, I'm sure lots of people have tried. I'm sure lots of people are doing it, and that is what Dave is doing. Um, but we need more. We need more people taking it upon themselves to like make all these texts accessible widely. Um, because motherfuckers don't have the time energy to look up a bunch of Greek words. Fuck Greek. Um, what page is this? 220?
Think so. For me, it's B. We're on 44B, the traditional, right? Yeah. Um, oh, sorry, 44 Dazan disclosing this. Oh, you read that before. Hold on. Okay, all right, I found it. I was right. So for me, it's page 404. The primordial phenomenon of truth and the derivative character of the traditional conception of truth, right?
Yuppers.
Okay. Being true. That's the weird thing too. The Kindle, I can't use it for class because the pages are completely different. Like I'm on page 404, and what are you on? Like two something or other?
262 slash
Yeah.
220.
Okay. All right.
And then over here in the fucking Stomball translation, it's like
Yeah.
217 and 209 or like, yeah, dude.
By the way, Dreyfus, he's using this other edition of Being in Time that I have. That's the same translation, but it's older. I bought it by accident. Well, I didn't buy it by accident, but it's massive. So it's the same exact one
Does it
that's
have
the
the
Harper Collins one or what perennial, but
does
it's like pages are different.
that's fucking weird. Does it
But
have
it's
the
literally the same one. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Like
I hate the pagination on this book, dude.
me too. I wish he had to like. I know he does like the 219 and stuff, and I like how Dave puts like AB or whatever. I wish they
Yeah.
did that, but it's really confusing because Dreyfus's companion or whatever is using this one, and it's literally the same exact one. I have it ready to hand as this one, but it's like you're on page 260 or whatever, and this is like 325, and I'm just like, I don't want to carry 7 books with me,
Yep.
so it's kind of annoying. But I digress. Let me dive into this. The primordial phenomenon of truth and the derivative character of traditional conception of truth. Being true, truth means being uncovering. But is not this a highly arbitrary way to define truth? But such drastic ways of defining this concept, we may succeed in eliminating the idea of agreement from the conception of truth. Must we not pay for this dubious gain by plunging the good old tradition into nullity? But while our definition is seemingly arbitrary, it contains only the necessary interpretation of what was primordially surmised in the oldest tradition of ancient philosophy. And this is what I was talking about before, about him saying like the pre-Socratics
Yeah.
were doing that fundamental ontology. So here he's given credit, but that's only because he's like, see, I'm the only philosopher who's right since then,
Yeah.
and humble, and even understood in a pre-phenomenological manner. If Greek, I think it's logos, I don't know what the other one is to be true. Its being true is more Greek in the manner of Greek, of taking entities out of their hiddenness and letting them be seen in their unhiddenness, their uncoveredness. The blank, which Aristotle equates with blank and blank in the passages cited above, signifies the things in themselves. It signifies what shows itself, entities, and the how of their uncoveredness. And here I wasn't like super freaking out about not understanding the Greek because he still like is just using it to say he's right. And I'm already like kind of like, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
But I think here he's just showing that they were onto it, even though he's like usurping it. But I
Yeah.
don't want to beat a dead horse. And is it accidental? Nietzsche will come for me. And is it accidental that in one of the fragments of Heraclitus, the oldest fragments of philosophical doctrine, in which I'm pretty sure this is logos is explicitly handled, the phenomenon of truth in the sense of uncoveredness, unhiddenness. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure he says like the logos likes to hide
Yeah.
Heraclitus or the truth.
Yeah, that is logos.
As we have set it forth, shows through. Those who are lacking in understanding are contrasted with the logos and also with him who speaks that logos and understands it. The logos is more Greek. It tells how entities comport themselves, but to those who are lacking in understanding, what they do remains hidden. They forget it. Oh, okay. That is, for them, it sinks back into hiddenness. Thus, to the logos belongs unhiddenness, and I'm pretty sure that's Aletheia.
That's Aletheia, yeah.
Yeah, which is truth.
Yep.
I only know that because David he like uses a lot of he has like a whole essay on that.
Mm.
To translate this word as truth, and above all, to define this expression conceptually in theoretical ways, is to cover up the meaning of what the Greeks made self-evidently basic for the terminology of the use of aletheia as a pre-philosophical way of understanding it. He has a lecture book on Heraclitus that I wanted to get, but the people on Amazon were saying that his translations of the fragments weren't like the best, and that he didn't
I
really define a lot of it.
yeah, I've looked at that too, and I didn't get it
Okay,
for similar
yeah.
reasons. I mean, it probably would be an interesting read at the very least. Like,
Might see if like my college library has it. I doubt it. It's a community college.
I mean, they might be able to order it.
That's true. I think that would be cool. Or see if I can borrow it online.
Yeah.
In citing such evidence, we must avoid uninhibited word mysticism. Nevertheless, the ultimate business of philosophy is to preserve the force of the most elemental words in which Dasein expresses itself, and to keep the common understanding from leveling them off to that unintelligibility which functions in turn as a source of pseudo problem. See, that right there is more like Wittgenstein, in my opinion. Just pseudo problems and like coming up with language games.
Yeah, and he's kind of getting at like, yeah, we we can change words and words do change and meaning is subjective, but also it's also not. Like it
Yeah.
is grounded. Like it is a groundless ground, but it is
Mm-hmm.
still grounded. Um and people like pretend like this absolute like social constructivism
Mhm.
And it's like, hey man, like, yeah, things are social constructs, but also that doesn't mean you can just up and change them willy-nilly whenever the fuck you feel like it for no reason.
Yeah.
Like they are constructed out of like other beings, and
Necessity.
yeah, and like they are contingent on meaning, and it's a collective meaning, and
Mhm.
like the fact that they are constructed doesn't mean that they're totally subjective.
Mhm.
um and it's taking like it's taking postmodernism seriously, like it's
Mhm.
doing postmodernism,
Before
but
it
for real
was,
though,
yeah.
yeah. And like before it kind of caught on and people went wild or whatever. um but it
He's
like
just
it
still relevant though, which
Yeah,
is
for
amazing.
sure, yeah, absolutely.
I was talking to somebody about like there was a video about the economy or capitalism, and it's like you could take the Nick Land thing where it's like an entity of itself with its own existence now, which it kind of is. I haven't
Totally
read
is.
much Land,
It
but
is. It's not. He's not the only one that says it. I
yeah,
say it too.
yeah,
But I mean, it is.
yeah.
It
And
totally is.
some things are reified into existence, but
Yeah,
it's like
buddy.
if we just shut off, you know how people are like, "What do you mean? Like we could just turn off the economy and set it again?" I'm like, "But you can't."
Yeah, it's out of our
Like,
hands.
yeah, like people would starve and
Yeah,
like people would lose their pensions and people
yeah.
like it can't work like that. Like you just have anarchy. So
Well,
it's
and like things. Oh yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to derail it
yeah,
because
yeah, we can
I
get
could
into
go
it.
on
I'm
and on and
sorry. Yeah,
on.
yeah.
But
My apologies.
yeah, man, capital is a thing into
Yeah.
its unto itself. We are not in control. Humans are not in control.
Hmm.
Humans have not been in control for a very long time, if not all along.
And that
Um,
could be a conversation we can have, like when
yeah,
we're just
dude.
riffing and like hit the record button. I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
But no, definitely. I just brought that up because I feel like everybody talks gender to death. And like, this is the last thing I'm going to say on that. I had like people who I worked with who were like older, not super old, like 40, 45. And he's like, fucking your gender is what's between your legs. I'm like, no, that's your sex. And he's like, yeah, but it's two. And I was like, hey, man, let me just finish real quick. I'm like, according your argument is biology is the only thing. And like it's based on like chromosomes and genitalia. And that's fine. That's is what sex is. But gender could be whatever you want it to. And it's like you're mad at gender, not like you're conflating the two.
Yeah,
So know what your terms are
yeah,
first
and you're
before
mad
you
at it. Yeah,
have a truck rant video.
yeah. Well, yeah, man. Like I fucking hate all social categories.
Same.
And I think we could probably do away with them. Um, and I
Like
just
race and
I
other
hate
stuff.
that conversation. Like I don't ever want to have that conversation. No,
Hmm.
that's not true because it's interesting. In the What is Sex course,
Hmm.
that was a great course. And it actually introduced like a nuanced view of what's actually going on, and it made me care again
Hmm.
because
Oh, that's awesome.
I didn't give a shit. I was like, I don't care about gender. I
That's
don't.
why I was avoiding it,
Yeah.
honestly.
Um, but yeah, that the What is Sex course made it possible for me to care again about gender.
Hmm.
But
That's awesome.
it shouldn't be talked about like it's the end all be all most radical fucking thing,
Yeah.
because it's not. It's a
No, it isn't.
personal thing that affects you and your
Hmm.
immediate world, and that's it. It's not the most radical
Hmm.
position. It's not going
Yeah.
to usher in the Star Trek world. It's just not.
It's like taking Simone de Beauvoir and like just timesing it by like 50 and thinking that it's, and I'm like, that shit was radical in Sartre's time.
Yeah.
And it's now it's like, and people are realizing that after the fact. And like we were saying before, like, fuck, that's not the most radical thing I can do. It's like, no, read Being in Time
Yeah.
or take the What is Sex course,
Yeah.
and then
That
you'll
yeah,
see
man.
what's radical.
Well, and it like it's been captured, dude. Like it has been fully reincorporated into the PMC bullshit.
Mm.
And that's all that's going on. And that's why, to me, it's like, oh, that's just PMC, like identity politics shit. Like, I don't want to talk about that. The only time
No,
I want to talk about it is with people who get it and who like are aware of the fact that it's just PMC nonsense.
like now,
It's
in a
just
sense.
distracting bullshit. Yeah. But I'm not
Hmm.
going to sit down and talk about your intersectionality because I don't give a fuck. Like,
Yeah, and
I,
it
I
doesn't.
it
It
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
all relate.
And it does, yeah.
Sorry.
Like, whatever. Get over it. Life sucks. People
Yep.
die every day. Children starve to death every day. People
There's
shoot
people
themselves every
dying of the
day.
heat. Yep.
Like, who gives a fuck? I don't. I mean, I
Yeah.
do, but also I don't. I mean, but
There's bigger fish to
there's
fry.
bigger fish to fry. I do care. It does matter and it is important, but it's not political. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be the only thing people are talking about. That should be things that you talk about in real
Cluster
life with,
bombs
yeah,
here,
yeah,
workers starving to death,
yeah,
inmates
yeah.
collapsing in heat, and then I want to just express myself and all that. Like, okay,
Go
buddy.
for it. Express yourself.
Yeah,
I'm all for it. I'm on
but
board. Express yourself, but
the narrative.
don't hijack theory.
Hmm. Truth, and dismiss everybody else
Yeah, come on, man. That's crazy.
without reading them or
Without
without.
reading it.
Yeah.
Just judging books by their covers.
Yeah.
I thought that
Which,
was not
yeah,
the good thing to do.
that's my senior quote, believe it or not. So I predicted all this. I got in trouble because I tried like hacking it to change my quote, but now I'm glad I didn't.
Fucking A, dude.
Yeah, I should have bought a
Hyperstition.
yearbook. Yeah. All right, I'm sorry. Back to Heidegger. We have now given a phenomenal. I think though these tangents are worthwhile and
Oh,
they're
definitely,
okay
dude.
because that's my justification of it.
Well, I mean, it's our situatedness right now.
That's true. That's
So
true.
it does matter. It is important. They are relevant.
That's true.
And it's part of the conversation. Like, it is part of the meta conversation, the larger
Hmm.
conversation that's
That's
going
true.
on.
Like
So
we were saying, tying in the other classes,
yeah.
much like Heidegger is tying in his argument.
Yep.
See, I brought it back.
There we go.
We've now given a phenomenal demonstration of what we set forth earlier. And plus, this is a short chapter. Just
Yeah.
as to logos and the aletheia, in so to speak, a dogmatic interpretation. In proposing our definition of truth, we have not shaken off the tradition, but we have appropriated it primordially, and we shall have done so all the more if we succeed in demonstrating that the idea of agreement is one to which the theory had to come on the basis of the primordial phenomenon of truth, and if we can show how this came about. Moreover, the definition of truth as uncoveredness and as being uncovering is not a mere explanation of a word. Among these ways in which Dasein comports itself, there are some which we are accustomed to in the first instance to call true. From the analysis of these, our definition emerges. Being true is being uncovering, is a way of being for Dasein. What makes this very uncovering possible, most necessarily be called true, is still more primordial. Is in a still more primordial sense. The most primordial phenomenon of truth is first shown by the existential ontological foundations of uncovering. Uncovering is a way of being for being in the world. Circumspective concern, or even that concern in which we tarry and look at something, uncovers entities within them. These entities become that which has been uncovered. They are true in a second sense. What is primarily true, that is uncovering, is Dasein. Truth is in the second sense does not mean being uncovering, but being uncovered, uncoveredness. Our earlier analysis of the worldhood of the world and of entities within the world has shown, however, that the uncoveredness of entities within the world is grounded in the world's disclosedness. But disclosedness is that basic character of Dasein, according to which it is its there. Disclosedness is constituted by a state of mind, understanding and discourse, Dave's circle, and pertains equiprimordial to the world. I've just already seen class like premonitions, to being in and to the self. And its very structure carries ahead of itself, being already in a world, as being alongside entities within the world. And in this structure, the disclosedness of Dasein lies hidden, with and through its uncoveredness. Hence, only with Dasein's disclosedness is the most primordial phenomenon of truth attained. What we have pointed out earlier with regard to the existential constitution of the there, and in relation to the everyday being of the there, pertains to the most primordial phenomenon of truth, nothing less. Insofar as Dasein is its disclosedness essentially, and discloses and uncovers as something disclosed, to this extent, it is essentially true. Dasein is in the truth. This assertion has meaning ontologically. It does not purport to say that ontically Dasein is introduced to all the truth. Either always or just in every case, but rather that the disclosedness of its ownmost being belongs to its existential constitution. If we accept the results we've attained earlier, the full existential meaning of the principle that Dasein is in the truth can be restored by the following considerations. 1. To Dasein's state of being, disclosedness in general essentially belongs. It embraces the whole of that structure of being which has become explicit through the phenomenon of care. To care belongs not only being in the world, but also being alongside entities within the world. This uncoveredness of such entities is equiprimordial with the being of Dasein and its disclosedness. 2. To Dasein's state of being belongs thrownness. Indeed, it is constitutive for Dasein's disclosedness. In thrownness is revealed that in each case, Dasein, as my Dasein and this Dasein, is already in a definite world and alongside a definite range of definite entities within the world. Disclosedness is essentially factical. 3. To Dasein's state of being belongs projection, disclosive. And I don't think he means in like the Freudian sense, like we're projecting towards things.
N-
Disclosive being towards its potentiality for being, as something that understands. Dasein can understand itself in terms of the world and others, or in terms of its own most potentiality for being. The possibility just mentioned means that Dasein discloses itself to itself and as its own most potentiality for being. This authentic disclosedness shows the phenomenon of the most primordial truth in the mode of authenticity. The most primordial and indeed the most authentic disclosedness in which Dasein as a potentiality for being can be is the truth of existence. This becomes existentially and ontologically definite only in connection with analysis of Dasein's authenticity. 4. To Dasein's state of being belongs falling. Approximately, and for the most part, Dasein is lost in its world. Its understanding as a projection upon possibilities of being has diverted itself thither. Its absorption in the they signifies that it is dominated by the way things are publicly interpreted. That which has been uncovered and disclosed stands in a mode in which it has been disguised and closed off by idle talk, curiosity, and ambiguity. Being towards entities has not been extinguished, but it has been uprooted. Entities have not been completely hidden. They are precisely the sort of things that has been uncovered, but at the same time they have been disguised. They show themselves, but in the mode of semblance. Likewise, what has been formerly been uncovered sinks back again, hidden and disguised. Because Dasein is essentially falling, its state of being is such that it is in untruth. This term, like the expression falling, is here used ontologically. If we are to use it in existential analysis, we must avoid getting it into any ontically negative evaluation. To be closed off and covered up belongs to Dasein's facticity and its full existential ontological meaning. The proposition that Dasein is in the truth states equiprimordially that Dasein is in untruth, but only insofar as Dasein has been disclosed, has it also been closed off, and only insofar as entities within the world have been uncovered along with Dasein? Have such entities as possibly encounterable within the world been covered up, hidden, or disguised? It is therefore essential that Dasein should explicitly appropriate what has already been uncovered, defend it against semblance and disguise, and assure itself of its uncoveredness again and again. The uncovering of anything new is never done on the basis of having something completely hidden, but takes its departure rather from uncoveredness in the mode of semblance. And entities look as if, that is, they have, in a certain way, been uncovered already, and yet they are still disguised. Truth, uncoveredness, is something that must always first be wrestled from entities. Entities get snatched out of their hiddenness. The factical uncoveredness of anything is always as if it were a kind of robbery. Is it accidental that when the Greeks express themselves as the essence of truth, they use a privative expression about theia? When Dasein so express themselves as the essence not a primordial understanding of its own being, thus make itself known? The understanding, even if it is only pre-ontological, that being in untruth makes up an essential characteristic of being in the world. The goddess of truth, who guides Parmenides, is that how you say it?
Parmenides.
Parmenides, thank you. I don't know why that always trips me up.
Because Greek is fucking stupid.
That's true. Thank you. Parmenides puts two pathways before him, one of uncovering, one of hiding. But this signifies nothing else than that Dasein is already both in the truth and in the untruth. The way of uncovering is achieved only in, not sure what the first one, what that is, and distinguishing rather than, in distinguishing between, let me reread that. The way of uncovering is achieved only in Greek, in distinguishing between these understanding and making one's decision for the one rather than the other. I want to see if I have that defined. No, it's just a footnote about Parmenides. The existential ontological condition for the fact that being in the world is characterized by truth and untruth lies in that state of Dasein's being, which we have designated as throne projection. This is something that is constitutive for the structure of care. The upshot of our existential ontological interpretation of the phenomenon of truth is one, that truth is, in the most primordial sense, is Dasein's disclosedness, to which the uncoveredness of entities within the world belongs, and two, that Dasein is equiprimordially both in the truth and in untruth. Within the horizon of the traditional interpretation of the phenomenon of truth, our insight into these principles will not be complete until it can be shown, one, that truth understood as agreement originates from disclosedness by way of definite modification. Two, that the kind of being which belongs to disclosedness itself is such that it is derivative modification first comes into view and leads the way from the theoretical explication of the structure of truth. Assertion as a structure, namely the, how do you say that? I think I've heard you say that before.
Apophantical.
Thank you. Say it again.
Apophantical.
Apophantical are founded upon interpretation and its structure. We should turn Hooked on Phonics into like Being in Time and see if it sells on Shark Tank.
I mean, I do think there's a lot of cool shit we could do in the CMT course, like just even taking Being in Time and making it in plain American English, like in plain contemporary American English, or maybe not the whole book, but like parts of it, sections of it, like
that'd be cool.
Translating it into the vulgar language, like that would be a cool experiment for the CMT cohort to do.
Cool. I think that would be fun.
Yeah,
just to like see one how long it would be, even if it was a short chapter. And I think it is possible. That's what like Blattner was trying to do and other people.
Yeah.
but they had like an axe to grind
y-
at least.
yeah. I think doing it like as normal people, we're normal people. We're not fancy, stuck up assholes.
That's true.
Like we understand what it's like to come to a book and just not like have any fucking idea what is that word or
Mhm.
why aren't they translating the Latin or why aren't they translating the Greek?
That's
Like
true.
we have encountered all these things, whereas all the other like professors and shit, they might try to translate it, but they're still gonna like honor traditions and conventions. Whereas,
Gatekeep conduct.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we have a freedom to just say, no, fuck it. I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say because it
Hmm.
needs to be said this way. So I can talk about it with my brother, the plumber, or my
That's
fucking
true.
my homie at the bar. Like that should be the objective of books like this, or maybe not every book, every time, all the time, always, but it like it should be more important to
Hmm.
thinkers to
No,
be
I agree.
actually legible to the
Hmm.
masses.
Because then that'll start the conversations that matter, and it'll
Yeah.
get them to like, because not everybody has the time energy to sit here and tarry with it, but maybe they're curious and they want the fucking cliff notes, but they want more of a cliff notes that, like you said, isn't selling, whether like being in time as the Kierkegaardian eye project or the blood and soil.
Yeah.
So it's like we can just give it as it is, at least how we interpret it without that
Yeah.
agenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that would be important because it would help people. Because like I consider myself pretty well read, not that it matters, but I'll admit if like don't know a word or I don't know something or like I'll dive in and try to see what it is because I'm obsessive. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of people just look at it and be like, no, fuck that. I'd
Yeah.
rather read
I'd
the
rather read a
subtle art
comic
and
book.
not giving a fuck or something too. Yeah,
Yeah.
that too.
Or I'd rather go jerk off, or I'd rather go
Yeah,
get stoned, or like I'd rather do something that doesn't make me feel like shit about myself.
yeah.
That's what the
I,
fucking PMC does. Like the PMC is always turning that shit back onto us and making us
mm,
feel like shit about ourselves. And the only way, like the one pre-approved path to like being respectable or whatever is to like cast off all the things about you that make you who you are.
mm-hmm,
Oh, I have to like dress and act and speak and walk and sit and look and act. Like you have to do all these things in these certain ways or else you're dirty, deplorable.
mm-hmm,
So people are just like, yeah, fuck it. Let's get drunk and watch football.
mm-hmm.
I don't
That's
feel
true.
like shit about myself when I'm doing that.
This girl did a book talk. She's like married to some guy who got famous for like buying a house with a penny, a series.
Yeah.
And she was like reading what the guy from Lighthouse and Batman, I can't think of his name right now. The actor.
Willem Dafoe.
No, 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 the other one, the young one. He was
Oh,
famous from Twilight.
Battinson. Robert Battinson.
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. So I guess he like talks about what books he likes, and a lot of them were like E.M. Foster and the one fucking poet everybody likes.
Yeats.
But
Yeats.
no, Body. How do you say it? Baudelaire,
Oh,
the
Baudelaire.
French guy. Yeah, Baudelaire. So she bought the books that he like recommended, and she's like, "I want to be honest. I don't really like reading this stuff because it makes me feel stupid.
Yeah.
That's why I read like young adult books and
Yeah.
like whatever." But she was like 100% honest in that moment, and it's like she has all the time energy in the world, but because like she's made to feel gatekept out of that,
Yeah,
that
dude.
she'll just buy what the masses buy, and I don't blame her.
Fuck
Like
Walt
I
Whitman.
wasn't even making fun of her. Like she's
Yeah.
honest at least.
Fuck Walt Whitman. Fuck Shakespeare even. Like fuck
Yeah,
all these guys because it's like, yeah, I don't care. I don't want to feel like shit about myself. I don't want to be made to feel dumb.
yeah. And
Um
they make you feel that way. Like that whole fucking Twitter exchange.
so what they do, man, like there's this like this thing where everyone is excluded because it's an exclusive club and you have to be you have to have all these qualities to be part of the
Yep.
club. So everyone is excluded, but then make up for it with this inclusive fucking rhetoric
Yep.
where like it's this weird, it's exact opposite things, and they're doing nothing really at all. But
Masturbate. You might as well jerk off at that
yeah,
point.
yeah,
Or at least you achieved something.
yeah, at least there was something occurred.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay. No, I agree. It's just it makes me sad, but there's there's I gotta believe there's hope
Well,
because
and
like that.
like it pisses me off and it makes me depressed, and it sucks, but like it's not even like a personal thing. Like those people aren't even doing it. They're just like playing a role. Like it's not like those people are bad people. Just as like
Mhm.
the dumb drunk fucking racist asshole down the road isn't a bad person because he's drunk
Doesn't
and
know any
racist.
better.
Like
Yeah.
he's just doing whatever it is that he does. Like people fill their assignments because we have all been turned into equipment by fucking
100%.
neoliberalism. And so yeah, it sucks, but the thing that sucks the most about it is that people aren't even exercising any agency at all. They think they are, or you know what? It doesn't
Like you
even
said,
matter if they,
robots.
yeah, we're all robots. It doesn't matter if people, doesn't matter what people think because like objectively, factically, people are fucking robots and we are at the whim of algorithms. And
And
that's
they're
what's the
not.
most sad about it.
The only way back is to literally, as Dave says, as Heidegger says, to poeticize your being
Yep.
and to like strike roots,
Yep.
to use the care to orient yourself, project out into the future for a forsake of the which that matters.
Yeah, man. This is like
But
a
it,
fucking roadmap.
yeah,
This
and
is
it's
the real
like,
chicken soup for the soul, bitches.
that's awesome. I've not even that. I just got to dive back into the text now because I'm not going to top
Yeah.
that. Heidegger chicken soup for the Dasein.
Yeah, there we go.
Assertion and its structure are founded upon interpretation and its structure, viz., the hermetical as, and also upon understanding upon Dasein's disclosedness. Truth, however, is regarded as a distinctive character of assertion as so derived. Thus, the roots of the truth of assertion reach back to the disclosedness of the understanding. I think this is the first time he's talked about roots other than like in the German. I could be wrong. I just noticed that, but I don't want to. I don't want to digress. But over and above these indications of how the truth of assertion has originated from the phenomenon of agreement must now be exhibited explicitly in its derivative character. I will say one thing. I appreciate the fact that we allow ourselves to get distracted and go on tangents because I would get pissed off in my classes because the professor would show us like she was earnest and she cared, but she had like 10 different like things she wanted to do in one class period for an hour and 15 minutes. And we'd be getting into a discussion, like the kids would be opening up and tarrying with the shit.
And you move
And
on to the
she's like,
next.
nope,
Yeah.
we need to watch fucking this Judith Butler thing, or we need to fucking talk about this. And like I
Yep.
like pulled her to the side after, and she's like, "Why are you getting so angry?" And I'm like, "Because that's where the kids are like, I'm passionate about something, and you're telling me to shut the fuck up
Yeah.
because you think the next thing is more important." And I'm like,
Well, and it's like there's so much to get through
"Yeah, I
that you
get
never
that."
get a chance to actually get into anything
Mm,
because you're not like it's not actually about getting an education. It's about
no, passing
satisfying.
this, getting
Yeah.
this requirement,
Yep.
moving on, and following that fucking script.
Yep.
And the only professor I had, ironically, or just blew my mind was it was a stats professor for math, and he was talking to me one day because like I'm older, so he'll talk to me, and he was like, "Yeah, Christopher, I've no," because I was telling him I was like, "I'll go on tangents," like I was talking about. He's like, "Anybody have any questions?" And I was like, "Yeah, what could we do about capitalist realism?" And then he's like, "Well, actually, like if we follow the experts, do we truly have true capitalism, or is it this?" And he like tarried with it for like 10 minutes. before class, and then he told me, he's like, when you guys get into discussions, he's like, I realize that's what's important. Like, yeah, I want to prepare you for the exam, but my thing is to teach and get you guys interested. And I'm like, see, somebody fucking gets it.
Yep.
So there is hope, or we can turn it into this forum in this way.
Yep.
So I'm like, you know what? It's my fucking Friday. If I want to go on a fucking tangent about the PMC, I'm going to.
By all
Or,
means, man. We need more tangents about the
oh
PMC in
yeah,
the world.
no, I agree. Tarry with it. All right. Our being alongside entities within the world is concern, and this is being which uncovers. To Dazon's disclosedness, however, discourse belongs essentially. Dazon expresses itself, it expresses itself as a being towards entities, a being towards which uncovers. And in assertion, it expresses itself, excuse me, as such about entities which have been uncovered. Assertion communicates entities and the how of their uncoveredness. When Dazan is aware of the communication, it brings itself in its awareness into an uncovering being towards the entities discussed. The assertion, which is expressed, is about something, and in what it is about, it contains the uncoveredness of these entities. This uncoveredness is preserved in what is expressed. What is expressed becomes, as it were, something ready to hand within the world, which can be taken up and spoken again. Because the uncoveredness has been preserved, that which is expressed, which thus is ready to hand, has in itself relation to any entities about which it is an assertion. Any uncoveredness is an uncoveredness of something. Even when Dazan speaks over again what someone else had says, it comes into a being towards the very entities which has been discussed. But it has been exempted from having to uncover them again primordially. And it holds that it has been thus exempted. Daza need not bring itself face to face with entities themselves in an original experience, but it nevertheless remains in a being towards these entities. In a large measure, uncoveredness gets appropriated not by one's own uncovering, but rather by hearsay of something that has been said. Absorption in something that has been said belongs to the kind of being which the they or one possesses. That which has been expressed as such takes over being towards those entities which have been uncovered in the assertion. If, however, these entities are to be appropriated explicitly with regard to their uncoveredness, this amounts to saying that the assertion is to be demonstrated as one that has uncovered. But the assertion expressed as something ready to hand, and indeed such a way that as something by which uncoveredness is preserved, it has in itself a relation to the entities uncovered. Now, to demonstrate that it is something which uncovers means to demonstrate how the assertion by which the uncoveredness is preserved is related to these entities. The assertion is something ready to hand. The entities to which it is related as something that uncovers are either ready to hand or present at hand within the world. The relation itself presents itself thus as one that is present at hand. But this relation lies in the fact that the uncoveredness preserved in the assertion is in each case an uncoveredness of something. The judgment contains something which holds for the objects, Kant, but the relation itself now acquires the character of presence at hand by getting switched over to a relationship between things which are present at hand. The uncoveredness of something becomes the present at hand, conformity of one thing which is present at hand, the assertion expressed to something else which is present at hand, the entity under discussion. And if this conformity is seen only as a relationship between things which are present at hand, that is, if the kind of being which belongs to the term of the relationship has not been discriminated and is understood as something merely present at hand, then the relation shows itself as an agreement of two things which are present at hand, an agreement which is present at hand itself.
Mm.
When the assertion has been expressed, the uncoveredness of the entity moves into the kind of being of that which is ready to hand within the world. One. But now to the extent that in this uncoveredness, as an uncoveredness of something, a relationship to something present at hand persists. The uncoveredness, truth, becomes for its part a relationship between things which are present at hand, intellectualists, and rays, a relationship that is present at hand itself. Though it is founded upon Dazon's disclosedness, the existential phenomenon of uncoveredness becomes a property which is present at hand, but in which there still lurks a relational character. And as such, a property, it gets broken. As such, a property, it gets broken asunder into a relationship which is present at hand, truth as disclosedness, and as a being towards uncovered entities. A being which itself uncovers has become truth as agreement between things which are present at hand within the world. And thus we have pointed out the ontologically derivative character, the traditional conception of truth. Yet that which is last in the order of the way things are connected in their foundations, existentially and ontologically, is regarded ontically as factically as that which is first and closest to us. The necessity of this fact, however, is based in turn upon the kind of being which Dasein itself possesses. Dasein, in its concernful absorption, understands itself in terms of what it encounters within the world. The uncoveredness which belongs to uncovering is something that we have come across proximately within the world in that which has been expressed. Not only truth, however, is encountered as present to hand. In general, our understanding of being is such that every entity is understood in the first instance as present at hand. If the truth which we encounter proximally is in an ontical manner, is considered ontologically in the way that is closest to us, then the assertion, and that was logos, correct?
That's logos. Yep.
Okay. Gets understood as logos. I'm not sure what that other one is, as an assertion about something. Do you know why it does like these weird spacing sometimes, if that's like purposeful, like
Yeah.
to emphasize or something?
So I think that's like an in dash or
Hmm.
a hyphen. I think that's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it's just like gets understood as that,
Hmm.
which is an assertion about something. Like
Hmm.
just a, I don't know, a different way to do a
Hmm.
like a comma or whatever.
Okay, I was just wondering because like sometimes like for mine it has like the about has like a space between every letter
Oh,
for some reason.
in the oh, it does in this one too.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what,
Oh,
because he did that with of before too.
I maybe
So
it's just fucked up typesetting. I don't know.
okay, I was just wondering because I know like they have like footnotes about like this was corrected in the other one, so I don't know. I've just that was like just bothering me. I don't know. This girl told me on Instagram that complex PTSD and autism are like right
Huh.
there because I posted a meme where it was like the guy talking in the girl's thing ear. He's like complex PTSD. So that's what it made me think of.
Oh
Anyway,
shit.
I digress. An assertion about something, an uncoveredness of something, but the phenomenon gets interpreted as something present at hand with regard to its possible presence at hand. Yet, because presence at hand has been equated with the meaning of being in general, the question of whether this kind of being of truth is a primordial one, and whether there's anything primordial in that structure of it which we encounter as closest to us, cannot come alive at all. The primordial phenomenon of truth has been covered up by Dazon's very understanding of being, that understanding which is proximately the one that prevails, and which even today has not been surmounted explicitly and in principle until now. At the same time, however, we must not overlook the fact that while this way of understanding being, the way which is closest to us, is one which the Greeks were the first to develop as a branch of knowledge, and to master the primordial understanding of truth was simultaneously alive among them, even if pre-ontologically. And it even held its own against the concealment implicit in their ontology, at least in Aristotle. And then here it just says Nicomachean Ethics and Metaphysica is what he is referencing. Aristotle never defends the thesis that the most primordial locus of truth is in the judgment. He says rather that the logos is that way of being in which Dasein can either uncover or cover up. This double possibility is what is distinctive in the being true of the logos. The logos is that way of comporting oneself, which can also cover things up. And because Aristotle never upheld this thesis we have mentioned, he was also never in a situation to broaden the conception of truth in the logos to include, I'm not sure what that is, the truth of aletheia, and of the seeing of ideas is the primordial kind of uncovering. And only because blank primarily uncovers can the logos as blank also have uncovering as its function. I know all those are brought up in the Dugan as well, but I just don't remember. I'm sure he's going to expand on it too, so I'll just keep reading while you look. Not only is it wrong to invoke Aristotle for the thesis that the genuine locus of truth lies in the judgment, even in its content, this thesis fails to recognize the structure of truth. Assertion is not the primary locus of truth. On the contrary, whether as a mode in which uncoveredness is appropriated or as a way of being in the world. Assertion is grounded in Dasein's uncovering, or rather in its disclosedness. The most primordial truth is the locus of assertion. It is the ontological condition for the possibility that the assertion can either be true or false, that they may uncover or cover things up. Truth understood in the most primordial sense belongs to the basic constitution of Dasein. The term signifies an existential. But herewith, we have already sketched out our answers to the question of what kind of being truth possesses, and to the question of in what sense it is necessary to presuppose that there is truth.
All right, so that the first one, the truth in logos to include pure. Oh shit! Hold on, I had it.
I think Dave has on the syllabus or in the
Oh, you know
cohort
what? He
Greek
fucking
translations.
does. He does. The one, the truth of aesthesis, which is sense
Mhm.
perception, and of the seeing of ideas, is a primordial kind of uncovering it only because. What is that? Fucking Greek.
Let's see. I'm going to try to pull up the cohort real quick.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea.
I meant to like print it out last time I was at my old job, but I forgot. I was like, "Oh, I'll get to it when I get there."
Yeah.
This is the problem with not being in Harvard. We would have known it. We would have had to take Greek and had the money.
Yeah. Fucking stupid little Greek letters, dude.
I should have like went further when I want to become a minister because you got to learn Greek. Because then I could have just said what it was.
Yeah. Okay, so the broaden the conception of truth in the logos to include pure
Oh, here we go. Greek and Latin translation.
knowing, pneuma, thought, intuitive apprehending, representation. Okay, so to broaden the conception of the truth in the logos to include pure thought, the truth of sense perception and the seeing of ideas is a primordial kind of uncovering, and only because. Which one was that? Shit, that's a different one. Where's that dumb little V? Oh, okay, that's sense perception again.
Oh,
And
okay.
only because sense perception primarily uncovers can the uh logos as hold on, we're getting there.
I'm waiting for Dave's Greek to
To load.
yeah,
Yeah.
Heidegger Greek PDF.
Where's that dumb little D looking thing?
I'll put it in the chat here so you could see it. I
Okay.
can figure out how to
And
get to the
that
chat. Oh, here
that
we go.
is understanding. Where did you go? I just fucking looked at you. Doxa, opinion, Dinonin, understanding, diuresis, division. Okay, so
Okay,
that
yeah,
one.
this has all of it,
Okay, awesome.
most of it at least. And this is good because like all of his books, like the lecture courses, do the same exact thing. I was looking through the one on Plato's Sophist, and I was like, I don't know what any of this shit means.
Oh,
This is what I get for being lazy.
no.
It's just intimidating. Like when I first was like loading all the resources, I was like, all right, I'll cross that bridge.
Yeah. Well, and it
I don't
is
know.
like it's new. Like people just don't tarry with shit.
That's true.
Like outside of like researchers at universities, people aren't tracking shit down. People are just like moving on. They're
That's
like, "Oh
true.
yeah, whatever, we'll move over it."
Edit it out. Yeah, I will say that critical thinking teacher I had, a lot of the students didn't like him because he was talking out of nowhere. I don't know why we were like talking about Augustine or somebody who wrote the Confessions. That's Augustine, I think. He was talking about him, and I guess there was something he said about abortion that nobody translated. So like he went to a bunch of different universities and found like the original translation that like nobody translated, and he was saying it was like suppressed and like because it like recontextualized the abortion debate, I guess, about the soul in babies. And he's like, huh, I wonder why like academia just
Yeah.
push this away. You know, it's just like because most people just won't dive into it.
Yeah, cuz people don't have the time
Yeah.
to dive
He
into that.
he printed it and like handed it to us, and I was probably the only person who like took a picture of it and was like, I gotta make sure not to lose this. And I like
Yeah.
sent it to my dad because he was a priest for a little bit.
So that like people when people are just like whatever or even when they react strongly to something, they get upset about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
people people do that to like make up for whatever they feel cuz they feel it when they don't engage, when they don't tarry.
Yeah.
Like people feel that. They acknowledge
Oh yeah.
it.
Nobody wants to feel stupid, like that girl
But
was saying.
yeah, but people like the thing that I've really been like trying to trying to figure out a way to put it into words to say it. It's like we're not even like doing all that. Like we're outsourcing our unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people do shitty things, like they're not even doing shitty things anymore. They're just reacting because like we are turning ourselves into machines that
Mm-hmm.
react to sensory input. Like we're
It's
not even
true.
allowing space for thought
It's just
anymore.
conditioned at this point, like a
Yes,
knee jerk
it's
reaction.
yes, it is. If X, then Y. Like there's not even any intent behind it. Like it's not like people do the shitty thing because they're being shitty or they want to be shitty, or even in a lot of cases, people don't even feel shitty anymore because there's no space in our brain to have those human thoughts and emotions and processes
Mm-hmm.
because everything, we outsource it all by the constant connectivity, like always
Mhm.
having this sensory input, this stimulus that
That's
takes us
true.
away and allows us to turn away from ourselves. Like it's, it is an algorithmic reaction. Like we are robots. We are doing the
And we
robot thing.
police ourselves to do the same.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you don't respond right away, or if you don't fucking you don't care, you're not interested, or you're not, and it's like everybody's depressed, everybody's on shit, and it's like it is a fleeting,
Yeah.
and like just immersing yourself with the one, and it's like this shit's been going on for a minute, and it's like it maybe if more people, like you said, understood it, because like people do want to know, like that stupid fucking
Yes.
book, The Subtle Art of Give It a Fuck, would have sold millions of copies. So it's like
No,
do
and
that.
when people have, like when people are able to fight and claw back some time from the
Hmm.
machine, they do feel it. They feel the ennui. They like they're like, "Oh, I do feel like shit."
Hmm.
And then they do start seeking, and then they do start having the processes and the emotions and the intentionality and all that shit. But like in the course of normal daily life,
Hmm.
like people aren't even doing shitty things because they want to be shitty or they feel shitty. People are just doing shitty things because that's what the algorithm demands. Like that is the
Yeah,
equation that they
it's
were
true.
presented with. Like we are all Chinese rooms,
Hmm.
and we're just responding, and that state of being is maintained by this constant sensory input,
Hmm.
the constant
That's true.
updates, the constant this, the constant that. So like when we do have these like PMC discussions and shit, like I always come back to that point
Hmm.
because I don't want that conversation to get derailed and turn into just airing grievances and complaining.
Yeah, because that's
And
what it does.
it
Like
does. It
normally,
tends to complaining
I've done it.
and doing like reifying the in-group out-group thing. We're like, oh, we're the cool, we're not in the PMC, we're the underground theorists. Like, yes, I do believe that, but also it's not even about that.
Hmm.
Like it's not like I want to sit here and say how much the persons on Twitter are stupid people that I don't like, because I care for them and I care about them and I
Yeah,
want them to
you want to give
reclaim
them
their
their humanity
humanity.
back.
That's
Yep.
exactly it. I want them to reclaim their humanity from the fucking machine. And surface level, having those conversations can appear that we're just reifying in group out group shit. And that's
That's
not at
true.
all what we're doing. Like we're truly talking about and thinking about and theorizing this, like, is it even possible to reclaim our humanity? And I think it is. I believe it is.
Mm, I think so. Or we wouldn't, because it's you're able to use the the tools, the techne that like Heidegger was very critical of. Like we're using techne right now to talk about Heidegger and to dive into this
Yeah.
fundamental ontology, hermeneutics. So it's like it's not all bad. We can connect, have like a face to face. Like, yeah, it would be great if like I was next door and I could just come over and we could do this. But it's like people on YouTube couldn't see it. Then I don't even care if it's three fucking people who watch this. There's three people who are like tiring with something and like
Yeah.
being human for a little bit. I'm doing this to reclaim my own humanity too.
Well, it's like the Luddites, like they they're a meme now. Like if people
Mm,
even know who the Luddites were anymore, like people,
mm,
but like
yeah.
Luddites, oh yeah, smash the machines. Like no, the Luddites, like the original Luddites, that movement was not
Mm-hmm.
about smashing machines. It was about like control.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about like we need to maintain control over the machines rather than letting the machines become a new form of control over us. Like that's what, like, and so like I like to talk about like we need a neo-Luddite movement,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
like actually like we need people who are willing and able to use the tools at our disposal for our own benefit. Like
mm-hmm.
it's not like, oh, smash the
Not for
machines.
capital or for yeah.
Yeah, because that's exactly what it is right now. Like everything is a tool and it
But
is being used by capital to control us. And capital, is just a dumb algorithm. Like it
Hmm.
really is
Yeah.
just the paperclip maximizer. It really is
Hmm.
just that. Um, and the only way that we can go anywhere is using the tools at our disposal. So like, yeah, I I believe that like the hyperlocality of the internet and the hyperextension of our singularity, like that's going to be essential. Figuring out
Hmm.
how to use that.
Yeah, and that's what's important about doing theory.
Yeah.
Again, as it keeps coming back because it's relevant and it is circular, but it's circular because it is so
Yeah.
kind of like the
Yeah.
argument in being in time. It's not
Yeah.
even an argument, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah. It's just
Some
a
things are
it's just a
tautological,
description.
like
Yeah. And
it
that's okay
happens. Yeah,
because they just are. They already are.
no, that's true. The last thing I want to say too is, you know, the guy from Dawson's Creek, James Vanderbeek.
Yeah.
He was talking about the writing strike, and he's like,
Yeah.
he's on vacation and he's like saying shit that I agree with, but he doesn't realize, like, he's like, you know, don't you want like a human making your stuff and like the human element to it and not cutting corners with Chat GPT? And I got really pissed off because I'm like, the shit you're writing now is
Yeah.
worse than fucking Chat GPT. There is no humanness into it. So
Yeah.
it's like you're saying you want humanness, but you don't realize the irony that you're no longer human.
Yeah. Well, and
And
that's I mean that's an issue with the commodity form itself. Like
mhm,
once something has been commoditized, it no longer is what it is, and it no longer has it, its own most. Like it no longer has the possibility
mhm,
to be what it can be because it all it is just a commodity. It's just another
mhm.
form of control.
That's
Um
true.
but yeah, I would love humans to make my art. And
Yeah,
so I go out in real life and find humans that are making art. I
yeah,
just, well, like I said, like I don't go to the movie theater to see a
yeah.
great film. I go to the movie theater
No,
to turn my brain off for 2 hours.
exactly. And but it's like, if that's all there is though, and that's fine. Because it's like, I get what James Vanderbeek Dawson's doing,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
it's like you need to support, like,
Well, it covers over the problem that we're already in by
exactly. Yes,
focusing
thank
on
you.
this future problem that could come about, that will come about.
And it's where
It erases the current problem. And
mhm,
it's like that's why I like
lead it to
when
that. You
people
have to.
talk about like, well, even like no, I don't want to say Marshall
Okay.
McLuhan is this, but when people talk about like, oh, I'm addicted to my cell phone, wouldn't it be great to get back to a time before cell phones? It's like, bitch, you think the world was great before we had cell phones?
No.
No, the world was not great before we had cell phones. Like we have way deeper problems. Like
Yeah.
this technology is just an iteration. It's not new. Like this
Mhm.
form of
We're
control
fleeing
has been
to.
happening. Yeah.
No, you're right.
We need to find the goddamn clearing. We need to stop
Mm,
burning down the forest.
100%. No, I agree. Do you want to take C if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Oh shit, we're almost at the end.
Yeah, this is the final section or final part of the section of the chapter of the first division.
Yes, no big deal.
Dude, yeah, this book, I love this book.
Oh
I
yeah,
hate
no,
it,
I
but
do
I love
too.
it too.
No, same, same. The beginning, I was so fucking pissed off when I went to that office hours. But like, it's
I was over it. I
yeah,
like I would I told Dave, I was
like
like,
the rage quit.
fuck
Yeah,
Heidegger. I'm over Heidegger, dude. I don't need Heidegger. I told him, I was like, I don't need to read this shit. I already figured it out.
yeah. And now
Nah.
you're like, no, I have to read it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's good though because you didn't pull what that fucking influencer girl did. Like, makes my brain hurt, so
Yeah.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
So okay. The irony is I'm watching her videos, but it's like that. Like, I fucking hate everything. Burn it down. Let me like.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah.
I mean, sometimes you gotta, I mean, you gotta let yourself indulge in
Mhm.
whatever, man, because
That's true.
if you don't, like,
Yeah, that was my Barbie moment,
yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
because I was like, let me just listen to this girl vlog about her day.
yeah, man, just brain off, just sit
Yep.
back for a little bit and just let it happen because it's fucking happening, whether you like it or not.
Truth.
And if you're always trying to resist,
Yeah.
you're gonna get burnout. Like
Oh yeah.
you need to take strategic fucking rests.
And have meth psychosis soon after.
Yeah, man. Move to fucking China and become
I'm
a
glad you
neo
got
reactionary.
me.
All right. Section or no, part C of section 44. The kind of being which truth possesses and the presupposition of truth. Dasein, as constituted by disclosedness, is essentially in the truth. Disclosedness is a kind of being which is essential to Dasein. There is truth only insofar as Dasein is, and so long as Dasein is. Again, the weird spacing on the is.
Yeah, that's fine.
Entities are uncovered only when Dasein is, and only as long as Dasein is are they disclosed. Newton's laws, the principle of contradiction, any truth, whatever, these are true only as long as Dasein is. Before there was any Dasein, there was no truth, nor will there be after any Dasein is no more. For in such a case, truth as disclosedness, uncovering and uncoveredness cannot be. Before Newton's laws were discovered, Zizek talks about this too, and I think it's Sublime Object, I think.
I actually wanted to talk to you about this, so let
Oh,
me hear that, and then I want to ask you something.
before Newton's laws were discovered, they were not true. It does not follow that they were false, or even that they would become false if ontically no discoveredness were any longer possible. Just as little does this restriction imply that the being true of truths has in any way been diminished. To say that before Newton his laws were neither true nor false cannot signify that before him there were no such entities as have been discovered and pointed out by those laws. Through Newton, the laws became true, and with them, entities became accessible in themselves to Dasein. Once entities have been uncovered, they show themselves precisely as entities which beforehand already were. Such uncovering is the kind of being which belongs to truth.
Have you read any per sig? Was that in the art of motorcycle
Firstly,
maintenance?
no.
Okay, so he's like, I just this was the last segue. Um, his son Chris is like talking about how there's this like kid he knows who believes in ghosts, and the parents are all like, "Oh, what an idiot!" And then they're like, "No, he's native," and then they're like, "Oh, okay, that's different, that's fine." And then Persig's just like, "You believe in ghosts?" And they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "Isaac Newton is a ghost," and he's talking about how he's like, "Let's talk about gravity." The law of gravity. He's like, did that exist before people? Was it just sitting outside waiting to be discovered, or did it exist when Isaac Newton had the apple hit him on the head? And I feel like Heidegger here is talking about the same thing, but giving it that like, hey, it exists because of Dasein and
Yeah.
the discoveredness, and it doesn't exist in the sense that like the concept and the clearing and other things won't be there if Dasein is not there to uncover it.
Yeah. So
The tree forest thing Dave talks about.
yeah, the tree forest. I in like I this to me is Hegel. Like
Okay, yeah, I don't
this
know anything about him.
um this this necessary after the fact contingency. This thing that is but only is because it already is. But that doesn't change the fact that it is. Like it nevertheless it is. It's a groundless ground. It's a fucking
Yep.
a virtuous circle that the tautology um and it is. And yeah, insofar as like we like math. Like math is there. Math math is real. Math exists, or I guess equations and ratios and like these things are there and they exist, but also they're only there because we have discovered them and because they're legible and coherent, and that's what makes them there.
Hmm.
Like just like the law of gravity, like yeah, the law, like he's not saying before Newton shit
Hmm.
floated up.
Yeah, exactly.
But like once it was, oh Jesus Christ, this is also like Ursula Le Guin. Like
Hmm.
once you name something, then you have a power over it. And the power that we have by naming things
Hmm.
is this truth quality. This quality of truth is the power that we have over things. Um, that are that are there. I mean, they're objectively there with or without us, but also
Hmm.
without us, they're not there because it doesn't matter because they haven't been
Yeah,
named.
exactly. And it's like the law of gravity exists in one sense, as in like you said, shit's not going to fucking fall down completely and out of orbit. But it doesn't exist because there's nobody there to systematize it and give it a name
Yeah.
and discover it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are like, you're just masturbating at this point. But it's like, no, we're
No,
not. So I just
it's
thought that was
situating us,
interesting.
it's pointing us back to our clearing. It's pointing us back to Dasein. It's recentering this world of the examined life. It's recentering that on the human
Hmm.
rather than this instrumentalized, mechanistic, mathematized universe that is there. It's there.
Hmm.
My desk is real,
Yep.
but also if if there were no humans and this desk was still a miraculous cosmic desk floating in the universe,
Yeah.
it it wouldn't be there. It is the case that if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, and like on one hand, of course it makes a noise. On the other hand,
Hmm.
of course it doesn't make a noise.
Exactly.
And that makes sense to me.
No, it does. It does. And I think you articulated it.
I don't think I did.
No, well, it makes sense to me because this is something I've been tearing with like since pursuing. And I like tried to the chapter where he explains it, they're like, man, you seem normal most of the time. He's like, yeah, he's like, I'm feigning 21st century fucking values so I don't get fucking murdered.
Yeah.
And it's like, but he's like, no, like this is what I'm thinking about, and it does make sense because like I'll tell people like sentences like that or non-philosophers, and they're like, what the fuck is the point of that? But it's like, no, it is because it
It's
centralizes what matters and
that's
what
exactly
is.
that's what it's doing. Like I think it is easy to say, well, yeah, so what? And the what there is that it's centering us. It's centering the human.
Mhm,
It's calling out attention. It's putting the ball in our court.
mhm,
And that is what needs to happen. That is, the precondition for any collective movement, for any collective identification is centering the human in the first fucking place.
100%.
And
Because
that
then you're just bumbling around.
yeah, and I think this is where with Heidegger's like weird aversion to techne, I think I think his like hate just comes from the fact that he's just a fucking racist.
Yeah,
Honestly, like
yeah.
and he sees the Jews as rootless, and he sees technics as precluding our ability to strike roots, and so he thinks that necessarily technics are a bad thing. I think that's where it
Mhm.
comes from.
No, I think you're right. That's what little I read of Heidegger and Runes, and then from the Dugin, I can see how much that's hammered home.
Yeah.
And it's like if he wasn't racist, like he would see like they are people who have roots.
Well, yeah, yeah, and that was the cultural milieu of the time,
Yeah,
and to not do any Heidegger apologetics, it just
yeah,
that was just the condition of the time, and
yeah.
it was what it
Honestly,
was, and he
yeah.
grew up
No, that's
in that
true.
world.
Like my
Um,
great grandmother would say "Jap" all the time, and it would make me
yeah,
cringe. But it's like I wasn't sitting there judging her because I'm
right,
like she
right.
saw Pearl Harbor and other stuff, and it's like
No, I
I'm
mean,
not
yeah,
gonna correct her.
it is what it is, man.
Yep,
Don't judge people
exactly.
against your
No,
own. I don't
cultural
know. Yeah,
situation. That's true. But yeah, no, I just thought that was an important fact. And again, that's where like I was like writing in my notebook about it and like connected to Persig and tearing with it. But by explaining it to you and then you explaining it to me, it at least clicked for me,
Yeah.
or there was that clearing. So I think it's important
Yeah, I
just
mean,
to add to the evangelism of exegetical readings.
yeah, man. I love it. I fucking love it, dude.
Um,
All right.
that there are eternal truths.
That there are eternal truths will not be adequately proved until someone has succeeded in demonstrating that Dasein has been and will be for all eternity. As long as such a proof is still outstanding, this principle remains a fanciful contention which does not gain in legitimacy from having philosophers commonly believe it. Because the kind of being that is essential to truth is of the character of Dasein, all truth is relative to Dasein's being. Does this relativity signify that all truth is subjective? If one interprets subjective as left to the subject's discretion, then it certainly does not. For uncovering, in the sense which is most its own, takes asserting out of the province of subjective discretion and brings the uncovering Dasein face to face with the entities themselves. And only because truth, as uncovering, is a kind of being which belongs to Dasein, can it be taken out of the province of Dasein's discretion. Even the universal validity of truth is rooted solely in the fact that Dasein can uncover entities in themselves and free them. Only so can these entities in themselves be binding for every possible assertion, that is, for every way of pointing them out. If truth has been correctly understood, is it in the least impaired by the fact that it is ontically possible only in the subject, and that it stands and falls with the being of that subject? Now that we have an existential conception of the kind of being that belongs to truth, the meaning of presupposing the truth also becomes intelligible. Why must we presuppose that there is truth? What is presupposing? What do we have in mind with the must and the we? What does it mean to say that there is truth? We presuppose truth because we, being in the kind of being which Dasein possesses, are in the truth. We do not presuppose it as something outside us and above us, towards which, along with other values, we comport ourselves. It is not we who presuppose truth, but it is truth that makes it at all possible ontologically for us to be able to be such that we presuppose anything at all. Truth is what first makes possible anything like presupposing. What does it mean to presuppose? It is to understand something as the ground for the being of some other entity. Such understanding of an entity and its interconnections of being is possible only on the ground of disclosedness, that is, on the ground of Dasein's being, something which uncovers. Thus, to presuppose truth means to understand it as something for the sake of which Dasein is. But Dasein is already ahead of itself in each case. This is implied in its state of being as care. It is an entity for which, in its being, its own most potentiality for being is an issue. To Dasein's being and its potentiality for being as being in the world, disclosedness and uncovering belong essentially. To Dasein, its potentiality for being in the world is an issue, and this includes concerning itself with entities within the world and uncovering them circumspectively. In Dasein's state of being as care, in being ahead of itself, lies the most primordial presupposing. Because this presupposing of itself belongs to Dasein's being, we must also presuppose ourselves as having the attribute of disclosedness. There are also entities with a character other than that of Dasein, but the presupposing which lies in Dasein's being does not relate itself to these. It relates itself solely to Dasein itself. The truth which has been presupposed, or that there is by which its being is to be defined, has that kind of being, or meaning of being, which belongs to Dasein itself. We must make the presupposition of truth because it is one that has been made already with the being of the we. We must presuppose truth. Dasein itself, as in each case, my Dasein and this Dasein, must be, and in the same way the truth, as Dasein's disclosedness, must be. This belongs to Dasein's essential thrownness into the world. Has Dasein as itself ever decided freely whether it wants to come into Dasein or not? And will it ever be able to make such a decision? In itself, it is quite incomprehensible why entities are to be uncovered, why truth and Dasein must be. The usual refutation of that skepticism, which denies either the being of truth or its cognizability, stops halfway. What it shows, as a formal argument, is simply that if anything gets judged, truth has been presupposed. This suggests that truth belongs to assertion, that pointing something out is, by its very meaning, an uncovering. But when one says this, one has to clarify why, that in which there lies the ontological ground for this necessary connection between assertion and truth as regards their being, must be as it is. The kind of being which belongs to truth is likewise left completely obscure, and so is the meaning of presupposing, and that of its ontological foundation in Dasein itself. Moreover, one here fails to recognize that even when nobody judges, truth already gets presupposed insofar as Dasein is at all. A skeptic can no more be refuted than the being of truth can be proved. And if any skeptic of the kind who denies the truth factically is, he does not even need to be refuted. Insofar as he is, and has understood himself in this being, he has obliterated Dasein in the desperation of suicide, and in doing so, he has obliterated truth. Because Dasein, for its own part, cannot first be subjected to proof, the necessity of truth cannot be proved either. It has no more been demonstrated that there ever has been an actual skeptic, though this is what has at bottom been believed in the refutations of skepticism, in spite of what these undertake to do. Then it has been demonstrated that there are any eternal truths. But perhaps such skeptics have been more frequent than one would innocently like to have true when one tries to bowl over skepticism by formal dialectics. Thus, with the question of the being of truth and the necessity of presupposing it, just as with the question of the essence of knowledge, an ideal subject has generally been posited. The motive for this, whether explicit or tacit, lies in the requirement that philosophy should have the a priori as its theme, rather than empirical facts as such. There is some justification for this requirement, though it still needs to be grounded ontologically. Yet is this requirement satisfied by positing an ideal subject? Is not such a subject a fanciful idealization? With such a conception, have we not missed precisely the a priori character of that merely factual subject, Dasein? Is it not an attribute of the a priori character of the factual subject, that is, an attribute of Dasein's facticity, that it is in the truth and in untruth equiprimordially? The ideas of a pure I and of a consciousness in general are so far from including the a priori character of actual subjectivity that the ontological characters of Dasein's facticity and its state of being are either passed over or not seen at all. Rejection of a consciousness in general does not signify that the a priori is negated any more than the positing of an idealized subject guarantees that Dasein has an a priori character grounded upon fact. Both the contention that there are eternal truths and the jumbling together of Dasein's phenomenally grounded ideality with an idealized absolute subject belong to those residues of Christian theology within philosophical problematics which have not as yet been radically extruded. The being of truth is connected primordially with Dasein, and only because Dasein is as constituted by disclosedness, that is, by understanding, can anything like being be understood. Only so is it possible to understand being. Being, not entities, is something which there is only insofar as truth is. And truth is only insofar and as long as Dasein is. Being and truth are equiprimordially. What does it signify that being is, where being is to be distinguished from every entity? One can ask this concretely only if the meaning of being and the full scope of the understanding of being have in general been clarified. Only then can one also analyze primordially what belongs to the concept of a science of being as such, and to its possibilities and its variations. And in demarcating this research and its truth, the kind of research in which entities are uncovered and its accompanying truth must be defined ontologically. The answer to the question of the meaning of being has yet to be given. What has our fundamental analysis of Dasein, as we have carried it out so far, contributed to working out this question? By laying bare the phenomenon of care, we have clarified the state of being of that entity to whose being something like an understanding of being belongs. At the same time, the being of Dasein has thus been distinguished from modes of being, readiness to hand, presence at hand, reality, which characterize entities with a character other than that of Dasein. Understanding has itself been elucidated, and at the same time, the methodological transparency of the procedure of interpreting being by understanding it and interpreting it has thus been guaranteed. If in care we have arrived at Dasein's primordial state of being, then this must also be the basis for conceptualizing that understanding of being which lies in care. That is to say, it must be possible to define the meaning of being. But is the phenomenon of care one in which the most primordial existential ontological state of Dasein is disclosed? And has the structural manifoldness which lies in this phenomenon presented us with the most primordial totality of factical Dasein's being? Has our investigation up to this point ever brought Dasein into view as a whole? Bum, bum, bum.
Oh yeah, it only took 4 hours. Dreyfus, I don't know. I should post them in cohort. I don't know how to though. I was listening to a audio of him. And he was saying that to his students. He was like, "Oh yeah, the reading usually every week will be 20 pages, but don't let that fool you. 20 pages of Heidegger is like 200 pages of anybody else. So like we just read like 400 pages of philosophy." According to
Yeah.
the Dreyfus. But I mean, it is kind of true because of how difficult he is. But I feel like I'm getting the lay of the land. I'm not gonna quit at Division One though. Like I've gone too far.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten I have definitely acclimated.
Yep.
I don't want to say it's gotten easier, but I've gotten
No. Yeah.
more able.
Oh yeah. And I'm seeing like I'm like before I was like, what the fuck is circumspection? And now I'm like, oh yeah, okay, circumspection's fitting here, solicitude's here. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. My notes have improved thanks to Dave. And
Yeah,
like the
I
way I'm like reading it.
yeah, I definitely need to keep improving my note taking, but like thinking of your future self and taking notes. And I really do like the page number and then like the lettering of what
Yeah.
paragraph on the page. Like that's a really awesome
Hmm.
trick to just help locate yourself whenever you're
Oh
trying
yeah.
to return to something. Like I love that.
And then I have the Kindle one up at the same time, and I'll like highlight that, and then I'll write page numbers down in the note because it's like I don't want to completely mark up my book just because I know it's gonna be like how I do it on the Kindle.
Yeah.
But
I do I have like I have the PDF on my tablet
mhm.
and then
Oh,
I
that's
have
cool.
the PDF on my other tablet and then I have the PDF on my computer and then
Oh, yeah.
like I have too many and then
Audio
I have the
books, yeah,
book. Yeah,
same.
like I need to condense
Yeah,
where I'm taking my notes
yeah.
into
Oh
one
yeah, that's true.
cuz like I'm all
Yeah.
over the place.
No, I use the two. I read the book because I'm like I want to fucking like sit with it, and then I have my notebook. And if I see a passage, I'll write about it first, and then I'll highlight it on the Kindle, just so if we're doing an exegetical reading or we're in class, it like is my feel good button. If like Dave reads that one, I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
haha,
Yeah.
5 gold stars, Christopher.
Yeah. It is
Just
validating.
highlight the whole chapter.
Yeah. I do like
Yeah,
when he's like, we're going to go over this section. And it's a section that I spent time going over and going
exactly,
back
because it
over.
just gives you validity, like
Yeah.
you said, and you're like, okay, I'm not just fucking aimless.
Yeah. It's like putting up signposts. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
I'm in the right neighborhood.
and I feel like at this point, like I want to do what other people haven't done. Like I know there is lectures on Travis did on part two, but I'm not going to listen to it unless I like really have to. But it's like there's graduate students who he was saying they had to like take classes on Descartes and Kant in order to take it, and like I did that, but not at like the graduate level. And it's like fuck that, like we're doing it. Like you and Dave did the fucking reading and other shit. Like I can listen to it. So it's like I'm doing shit that kids at Berkeley who are like, this is their job are like dicking around with. And it's like, no, fuck that. I'll take my Friday and spend 4 fucking hours and dive into it and fucking.
It
And
is,
you need that libidinal drive, or
yeah.
people call you sod otherwise.
Yeah, it is cool to think about the potentiality to be able to not just hold your own with
Mm-hmm.
those people, but actually go in and like totally shit on their fucking kitchen table. Like
Yeah,
be like, "No, I actually read this shit.
yeah.
Like I fucking like I know what's up. You don't know what's up."
It reminds me of Good Will Hunting, kind of.
Applesauce, bitch.
Yeah. And I don't know
Yes.
if you've seen Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where he's like, well, you've been dating. He's like, I've been reading shit you don't even know about. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, what are we gonna do? Shoots him. But yeah, no, that's
Oh,
pretty
dude.
much.
I watched they made a new Jay and Silent Bob movie a few years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um
that one was all right.
yeah, it sucked.
Yeah, I was
But
trying to get out.
I mean, the first Jay and Silent Bob, I think like I loved
I
it
was
so much
hammered when I
because the
watched it, though.
time, like it was
Yeah.
when I came to it.
Yep.
Like going back and watching it for the first time now, I probably wouldn't even like it. I'd be like, this is fucking
No,
stupid.
no. My mom took us to see it. Sorry, mom,
Oh
if you do
shit.
this. And she just was like, and then it was like, a Hasidic Jew kid snuck in, which was kind of funny too. And then it was like, who would pay to see a Jay and Silent Bob movie? And my Bob just was like, I failed.
That's
If she
awesome,
saw
dude.
this, she'd be like, I failed. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
But yeah, no.
that's awesome.
But no, I'm glad we did this. I'm down too with Division 2 if you want to start, or History of Concept of Time. We can like do it in blocks. I think that
Yeah.
would be cool for the channel. Or I like the live stream too, though, option. So we
Yeah.
can play with whatever you want. I know you've been doing different stuff on the channel.
Yeah, I want to be able to have a playlist of exegetical readings for every text
That'd
that
be
we
sick.
go through. I really want to do history of the concept of time.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. Um
Let's see.
and yeah, like I want to have that up there for other people, and I
Oh yeah,
also like I want to encourage other people to do them too
yeah.
cuz
No, it's not that, and it's longer, but it's more readable.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like
yeah,
it'll
yeah,
go
yeah.
faster.
It is way more readable, and he does kind of answer some of the questions that we're asking as we're reading being a
Yeah.
time, like some of the stuff that we're like, I don't know. It is in History of the Concept of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, I definitely I want to make I want to just cover like all the every book that we go through. I want to cover it
That'd be sick. And you can go back and be
and
like,
use
man,
it
I was
as
fucking
notes,
dumb there. Like
or
I can,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
come back and be like, oh, I was wrong about that. But
yeah.
also like these do serve as note taking. Like this
That's
is
true.
a different way to take notes. Like you can
That's
say
true.
something,
No, I like that. That's
and
true.
like if I'm working on something, I can be like, oh shit, what did Christopher say? I'll
Yeah,
just
no,
watch the
same.
video. Like it's
Yeah. And then people in the comments are helpful too. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But yeah, I want to keep fucking
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to keep
down.
doing them, and I really do
I'm
want to
learning a
encourage other
lot.
people
I'm
to do them.
learning more by doing it.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. I
And it
have
would be cool. I want to get more people in on it too, like you were saying.
yeah.
Like doing it
So
with Ahmed would be sick.
it works best in groups of 2 to 3.
Yeah,
Um, more than 3 people, and then you
you'll
get
get lost.
yeah, people just stop paying attention and stop contributing. Like when it's 2 or 3, it really is because you get out of it when I'm listening to you, I'm getting benefit, but also I get benefit when I'm reading and when I'm speaking my own mind, like when I'm putting my thoughts to words,
But yeah,
that's also beneficial. So if you get too many people, you just get the quiet person who
that's true.
doesn't talk, they're not getting the full benefit.
No. And then
Um
they're like thinking like, oh, I just read it twice. It's like you didn't know. Because like
yeah.
there's times I'm reading it and I'll be like, no, my eyes were just on the page.
Yep.
And I have to go back 2 pages because I'm just trying to get done. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's pointless then. Because what's the fucking point of reading it if I'm not reading it?
Yeah. Yeah, but like
I
doing
think
it
that's
in this
true.
format, it 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 forces you to actually do it and be there and doing it.
Mhm.
And shit emerges. Like shit comes
That's
up
true.
that isn't gonna come up on my own, on your own.
Hmm.
Like,
That's true.
um,
Just a dialectical process.
yeah, dude. And I
No, I
like,
agree.
dude, and I know it's time consuming, and that's like that's the only thing that sucks about it is that
Yeah,
the time energy element.
but we're fortunate in that capacity at least.
Yeah.
And it's like there's people who are going to see Barbie and then Oppenheimer, or vice versa, in the same day, and that's cool. I'm happy for them. But it's like I've scrolled on my phone longer than this.
Yeah.
Like I could sit and like jerk off for fucking 20 minutes and watch anime for fucking, it's like one of my accomplishments. And there's times you need to do that, but I'm just
Definitely.
saying
Definitely.
there's times you need to do this too.
Yeah.
And it's like
And breaking those tendencies to always do that. Always jerk
mm,
off. Always scroll. Always
video
play video
games.
games. Always
Yep.
go like it's okay to do that shit, but your like default should be to do something like this.
Yeah.
And I'm not
Especially at
saying
our age.
necessarily like reading a time consuming book, but reading, writing, thinking, talking, like
Mm,
these types of things should be the default. Oh, I got 45 minutes. Let me see if anyone's down to have a conversation, or let me write in my journal, or let me go
yep.
over this text that I've been struggling with, or let me read Christopher's reflection and respond to it. Like
Yeah, that's true.
all this shit, like if we can get to the
Get out of
point
that
where this
isolated.
is our default.
No, that's
um
true. No, I think we are to
yeah,
some
yeah,
point because it's like you're like, oh, I have free time, let me hop on, and then
yep,
people watch it and comment.
yep.
So
Well,
I
I know,
think
I
that's
mean,
good.
it'll come and go in waves too.
That's true.
And that's why if we have just like a core of people,
Hmm.
it'll just get to a point where there's always something. It's a persistent living world,
That's true.
and we can
That's true.
drop in and drop out, and it's always happening.
That's true. Like you said, the goal is like that intelligence. And it's funny because like I talk to people not in this community, and this single mama I was talking to is like burnt out on capitalism, and she was complaining about time energy, even if she didn't know what it was.
Yep.
And she said she like wishes she could have like a commune of like single mothers, but then she's like, it sucks because like I worry about our brothers too and stuff. She's kind of a hippie, but it's like she wants the same thing. Like she's like, I just want to read stuff and devote my energies to creating and like other stuff. And she was like talking to me about sex work and how she thinks like that's how women can get like their capital back. So I was just telling her, I was like, yeah, I'm like, there's a lot of feminist theories about that if you want to like dive into that and like sit with it and see what they think. So you have somewhere to jump off from.
Yeah.
Because it's like otherwise, like you're reinventing the wheel, and sometimes that's cool, but it's like
Yeah. Sometimes the
nothing's
wheels.
original anyway.
Yeah.
Like they, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So it's
Yeah,
important.
man. And doing all that shit in isolation,
Oh yeah, it
it's
just
just a
makes you
dead
feel
end.
worse. Yep.
It like you're not gonna get anywhere, man. Um, and people are
And then,
so conditioned to just remain in that isolation.
yeah. I'm gonna try to when I go to get my undergraduate, just to like see if I can get some of the classmates to do it, like with the text or other things. Just be like, you guys want to do a study group, and just see, because like I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I've had like this, we had to do like where we showed each other part of our outline or survey questions from my sociology class. And this one girl was like, yeah, normally I'm on my phone, but like when I hear you talk, you don't just like say stuff to say stuff. You're like really trying to figure stuff out, and it's really interesting. And I listen, and I'm like, see, like that girl is curious. And
Yeah.
it's like instead of shitting on her, imagine if I was like, because I'm older, so if I was like, hey, why don't we get a group of 3 people and go do it? She knows I'm not like trying to get in her pants.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe that'll inspire her to fucking tire you with something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, I'm
Well,
just gonna fucking be miserable and be a doomer
yeah, man. That's
or
I mean,
move to China.
we don't recognize ourselves. We don't recognize others as others.
Mhm.
We're just we're all cockroaches.
Yeah.
Um, and that sucks.
but there's hope because like even those people talking shit about my time lapses, it's getting them thinking, and it's saying something about them. Like even with the book cover thing, not to dwell on it, but it's just like it triggered something in people, and I hate that word, but it's like,
No, it
what is that
did.
eliciting?
Yeah, there was something there. It resonated. People reacted strongly, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
Hopefully, it awakens something inside them,
Yeah.
and it encourages them to be critical and examine their environment
Hmm.
and actually try to reclaim their fucking humanity, man. Like ultimately, at the
Hmm.
end of the day,
That's
that
what matters. Yeah.
that's yeah, like that's what we got to do first. We can, hash out the fucking genitalia
Yeah.
once we have our humanity back.
I agree. And that there's a way to do it. That's just my sermon. I think I'm gonna write a Substack just about exegetical reading because, like, I'll just write little shit, not too much theory wise sometimes, but just like in praise of exegetical reading, and it may get some people like
Hell yeah.
spinning. And that's all.
Yep.
That's all I'm trying to do, and I'm doing it for me too,
Yep.
like because I care.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. Just let me know when you want to do the next one. Just shoot me a text or an email,
Yeah.
and we
It'll
can figure that
be
out. I know you're kind of booked a little bit too,
yeah,
but
think I think like the first week in August,
okay.
I'm gonna be in Wyoming.
Oh hell yeah.
Um, and I might have time
Hmm.
to get one in, at
Yeah.
least one, maybe
Yeah.
depending.
Even if it's
Um,
like a short one, just to like get
yeah,
it going, just
yeah,
to keep that. Just let me know. I
yeah,
enjoyed it. I'm glad we did this today. I appreciate it.
yeah, dude. I
It
am
definitely
too.
helps.
Like I'm looking forward to. I want to go back and do all of Division 1 in an
Yeah.
exegetical form,
That'll be
so
cool.
we can
I'd
put
be
it up.
down. Honestly, we have the time,
Yeah,
like before class, and it might
yeah,
help.
yeah.
So
Well, I know to be a good resource for the future people that come
that's true.
to the future cohorts will
As
have
a
those resources. So
as opposed to like a 45-minute, like, let's give the cliff notes. The chat
right.
GPT. Like, I love the partial exam in life, but I like that they went back and reread like those chapters and like or use their own podcast as a resource and
Yep.
stuff. And they're like,
Yep.
man, what the fuck was I thinking? Or that was good. Or oh, I guess that sounded eloquent there.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Like you said, it's note taking with another.
Yep.
It's solicitude and
Yep.
a reticent. So I think it's dope.
Hell yeah.
I appreciate it.
Oh,
I
hell
want to
yeah,
go.
man.
I
I
want
gotta
to
eat.
go eat some sushi. Yeah.
I'm gonna go eat some tacos and I'm gonna go
Oh
to
hell
bed
yeah.
early, dude.
All right, man. Have a good night. Thanks
Yeah, man.
again.
Thank you,
I'll
dude.
catch you later.
Yep. See you
Have a
tomorrow
good one.
morning.
Sounds good.
All right, man.
Peace.
Peace.